Fuego Pizza presents SDP. The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle and Adam Wilde.
All right. So here's what I think. I got an opinion. Before we bring on our first guest.
Okay.
The name of this show has to be the Philip Podcast Fitch. That's what the name of the show has to be.
See, the thing about that title is it sucks. And the easiest solution, I think, is this Steve Dangle PDO cast.
I mean, that's kind of lame, though. I think everybody's expecting that. What we need...
A lot of bit clever.
What we need is to bring on Dimitri Filipovic and get his opinion. Dimitri Filipovic, everybody! From the PDO cast. Dude, what's going on?
Nothing. I just clap for myself there.
No. Hey, we have there's a huge audience here, man. So
I think the Steve Dangle PDO cast is the better of the two. I don't think either are necessarily ideal. You know what? We're gonna be talking here for a while, so we'll brainstorm.
Okay, yeah.
By the end of the show, we'll figure something out.
We'll put that one to the side. More important questions. Are you Jam?
Am I Jim?
Jam.
Am I Jam?
Yes.
he won't understand that. He didn't hear the last
But I need
segment
to
of the
know
last
if
show.
he's Jam.
Is
We
Dimitri
were
Jam?
discussing whether or not guacamole is jam. Jesse, comment?
I don't think that's what we were discussing at all.
What
I
were
think-
we? No,
Are
it was
tennis
whether-
balls yellow or green?
Yeah. So, Dimitri, are you yellow or green?
Are we recording right now?
Welcome to the show,
I
man.
know. Yeah. Welcome to every show.
I was not prepared for any of these
Yeah,
questions.
well,
We had a whole pre-show thing where you guys
Oh,
like, this is what
yeah.
we're gonna talk about, and then you just blindsided me like this.
Adam does that every show.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Sometimes you want to just throw people a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah. What do you think? Tennis balls, yellow or green?
Green.
Yes. Yes.
I'm showing you a picture of tennis balls.
Okay, but there's various shades of green on the screen, and there's some yellow ones. What does Google say when you actually ask them the question?
What color is this?
That one's yellowish.
That's one
Oh,
Google
let's
image.
just show our guests a variety of tennis balls of varying colors.
Like a wet tennis ball is definitely green.
Was
What
that
did
the
you
question?
Google, Jesse? Yellow tennis ball? Like, come on.
He probably did Google that. I would.
Dimitri, what did I Google?
Tennis ball. That's fair.
Wow.
That's fair.
Wow.
That's a Wilson
I'm-
one too. That's professional.
I'm playing by the rules here, guys.
Oh.
I pulled up a Wimbledon Wilson tennis ball, and it's yellow.
It's the real deal.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
I think it's over. I think I won. So
I'd actually like to report that tennis balls are yellow. And, sorry, wait. My source just got back to me, and in fact, that is false. And
I would
tennis
like-
balls are green.
I would like to challenge that. Let's go to
Oh,
Toronto.
my God.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but first I got to ask Dimitri, why is it a big deal to your followers that Jean-Francois Berube, the backup goalie for the Chicago Blackhawks, is on waivers?
Is he even backup?
I think he's. I mean,
Does
he's
he
on.
exist? How many games has he played?
That's the running joke. So last year, I was kind of calling into question the fact that the Islanders were carrying 3 goalies, which teams rarely ever do.
Right.
And Berube was just in their press box all season and never made an appearance on the ice. And then I had this whole running bit with my listeners. Can anyone prove that he actually exists? Is he a real person? This whole thing. And so now whenever he does anything, my mentions blow up with people alerting me. And
Whoa.
So he exists, at least in contract.
He
form.
was the
Yeah.
Islanders version of, like, with apologies to Matt Damon, we couldn't get you on.
yeah, basically. Yeah.
No, he barely ever existed. And didn't Vegas get him somehow? And then
Yes. Yeah, they took him in the expansion draft from the Islanders, and then the Blackhawks signed him to be like the third stringer, which he's very good at.
he's got more jerseys than NHL games
Yep.
played, something like that.
Hey, at least he's making that NHL salary, right?
He might not be.
Not
he might
anymore.
Be on yeah, he's on a two-way, I guess. So.
Oh, is he?
I don't know.
Probably.
If you have to be on waivers, though.
As his agent, I should know the answer to this question. But,
We don't know anything about him.
yeah.
That's the great thing about him. It's my favorite thing.
But if Chicago is sending him down, then who is playing net for them? Is it Glass and
Anton Forsberg
okay, and that's
Right.
who they got. They got that from Columbus.
in the Saad Panarin trade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was supposed to be one of Columbus's good prospects, was he not?
Yeah, they had him and Corpusalo, and then he sort of washed out of the AHL level, and the Blackhawks took a gamble on him, and it hasn't really paid off. So
Okay.
He was the goalie Matthews sniped that OT winner on earlier this season.
Right.
But you never know with goalies. Like 5 years from now, you could randomly resurface on Arizona and have a 925 save percentage.
I mean, well, dude, that would have been true until you said Arizona. So,
Anywhere, I don't know
anywhere
where.
else.
I don't know where.
You could be Curtis McElhaney and wait until you're 33 and
There we go.
be
Right.
like the best backup.
Right.
Yeah.
And Adam, Arizona embarrassed Tampa last night, so please give them some respect.
You're right. Well, you know what? I'll be hearing from Alder fan about it.
Wow.
Sarah Hall will tweet you as their representative.
I know it's coming.
Spicy.
Oh, come on. I like to tease them. But they're there. They exist.
We now go live to the angry mob outside. Boo. One person. No, that's mean.
Okay, so I'm just going to run through, Dimitri, a few things.
Yes.
But I think the first thing, and the reason that Steve really wanted to have you on today, was the great city that you flew in from today.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful places in the country, if not the most beautiful. Fantastic climate, great architecture, fantastic lifestyle. But not
Architecture, Adam.
not necessarily a lot of exposed brick. Not a lot necessarily of hockey sense, it seems.
Whoa, in the entire city or just the management?
Why is Adam just taking shots at every team?
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
Because Toronto's winning and I can.
Adam, an Adam handshake is just a shank through the ribs.
Absolutely.
Shoot.
Yeah, that's just all he does.
So-
a sharpened toothbrush.
You said something, Dimitri, that struck Steve, and then when Steve passed it on to Jesse and I, it struck us. And this is a very telling statement, so can you drop it on us?
I think so. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is over the past 3 seasons, the Canucks are the 30th ranked team in the league, and that's not counting Vegas. Obviously, they haven't been in the league for the past 3 years, so they've been the worst. They've been worse than Buffalo, Arizona, and those two teams are sort of on the record trying to be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Canucks are on the record trying to make the playoffs during that time, which strikes me as a bit of a problem. And I think the whole article it stemmed around the fact that I was raising the question of why aren't people talking about this more? And I think it's kind of controlling the narrative a little bit, what Benning and Linden have done in terms
Which,
of.
given the record, they've done a good job of.
No, they've done a great job of spinning everything into, they want to rebuild the right way. They point to other teams. You can't bottom out fully because look how long the road is back to the top. And I know. And
I mean, look at Colorado. Long road back to the top. I mean, it was one season.
And the other thing is what they have working in sort of their defense is they're both quote unquote hockey guys.
Trusted hockey men.
Exactly. And that buys them, especially with some media members, a long leash to work through their mistakes. And that's why, you see someone like John Chayka in Arizona, as soon as something goes wrong, it's called into question. It's an indictment against analytics. Whereas whenever you sign Louis Eriksson to a $36 million deal, I'm sure it was a hockey decision and not analytics. So
Actually, maybe before we go deeper into the Canucks, one thing that I've done a terrible job of explaining on this show is how people who are really heavy into analytics don't actually really trust John Chayka.
Can you explain that one?
Yeah. Are you tapped into that?
I don't know if it's necessarily a mistrust.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily know John personally,
Of
so
course.
I don't want to comment on his character. Or
I
his
want you to
knowledge.
personally assassinate him.
Well, we've already pretty much
assassinate his
shamed
character.
Arizona. So, he's he comes from more of a micro stats tracking background, kind of like Sport Logic.
Yeah.
So he has his own company, the Statleets, and they basically track all these micro events like zone exits, zone entries, loose puck recoveries, everything in the neutral zone. And so he bases a lot of his decisions off of that more so than actually being a pure quote unquote analytics guy sitting in his mom's basement looking at Excel spreadsheets,
Right.
like myself and a few others.
Of course, yeah.
So that's why there's a bit of divide there, but there's no question. I mean, just based on his age and sort of that background, that he's more of a new school progressive type, and people are just chomping at the bit to kind of call his expertise into question whenever anything goes wrong, like it has this season in Arizona for quite a bit.
Are the Canucks using, and we'll get back to Arizona because I definitely want to bring them up more, but since we're on the Canucks thing,
Yep.
Are the Canucks using any sort of analytics at all?
I think they have a few members in their organization that are collecting some of that stuff, but clearly based on the decision making, it's obvious that it's not necessarily being considered when they're making their moves.
So what's the biggest problem? Can you boil it down to
How
one
long
thing?
is this podcast?
Yeah, it's long. It's long. We got time.
Get into the nitty gritty, man. That's, I mean, I can't tell you how many shows we spent just talking about Brendan Leipsic this past summer.
Yeah.
So and he's now a Canuck, so get into whatever you want to get into.
And that was actually a smart acquisition, one of the few things I've agreed with what, and see, that's the problem. The Canucks need to be doing more of that stuff, sort of these
And the Burrows trade?
low risk, high reward moves, acknowledging where they are. And this ties back to that article where there's been this delusion sort of that they're much better off than they are, and this is going to be a quick rebuild, and they're going to be back to their former glory very shortly. And now we're going on 3-4 years of them being the worst team in the league. And, Brock Besser had a great season before he got injured. Elias Pettersson has all these amazing YouTube videos playing in Sweden, and that's exciting. But for a team that's been as bad as they have for the past couple of years, there's not nearly enough to show for it. And that's sort of the crux of my argument. It's sort of everything's been done in half measures as opposed to just acknowledging the reality of the situation, just blowing it up.
Would Eric Goodbranson and the extension that he signed right before, or was it right after the trade deadline, would that kind of play into that half measure?
Absolutely. And just let's trace back this trade tree. I know, Steve, you love doing trade trees. So they trade Ryan Kessler because he doesn't fit, they're going to acknowledge this rebuild. So they trade Ryan Kessler for Nick Bonino and a first-round pick, which becomes Jared McCann. All right, that's great. I like Jared McCann.
Cool.
They trade Jared McCann and other picks for Eric Goodbranson. Okay, that's kind of weird, but all right, whatever. They get a first-hand glimpse of Eric Goodbranson and the fact that he's, a fifth or sixth defenseman at best at that NHL level. And instead of trading him, and we saw what the market was like at the deadline this year, I mean, they could have gotten at least a couple of picks. I heard that a second and a fourth were available.
Wow.
Maybe even from a team in the city that we're recording in right now.
That was a rumor, yeah.
Instead, they're like, you know what? We need to keep this guy in Vancouver, and we're going to pay him. Rather than just trading him, and then if they don't want him so bad, just sign him this summer and have the best of both worlds. But that's the thing. Like, Jim Benning gets propped up as being sort of like a master scout and an evaluator come the draft. And he's nailed quite a few draft picks. But the problem is, like, there isn't this.
But he's not as a GM, you're not a scout. You're a GM.
Yeah. So he doesn't understand, like, the tactician side of the job where it's like you sort of have to juggle all these different things and have a broader picture of what you want your organization to look like 3-4 years from now. And it's been a lot of this sort of tunnel vision, just one thing at a time. And I don't think you can build a team successfully like that in 2018.
Fair enough.
Well, shoot.
Well, okay, so is there anything that you've seen that leads you to believe the Canucks will be either taking a different tact or is there, like, hope in the tunnel? Like, other than the young players that, like, is there any sort of, are they going to be bad again next year?
Hope in the tunnel.
Is that
That's not a thing, but
it is now.
Light at the end of the tunnel is what I meant.
I think
but I saw hope.
Found an episode title.
Hope in the tunnel.
Hope in the tunnel.
Well, they just signed him to a 3-year extension, so I don't think there's a lot of hope in the tunnel.
Shoot.
Yeah, it's not. It's pretty bleak, and honestly, I mean, you guys probably experienced this here in Toronto with Leafs fans when things weren't going very well under Randy Carlyle.
Just a little bit,
No,
yeah.
but there's this delusion, and it's like living in Vancouver. And I'm not a fan of the Canucks anymore. I consider myself more of an objective journalist, and I try to cover the league as a whole. But, like, I can't help but hear how people are talking about it locally.
Totally.
And it just seems like everyone's stuck in that, like, everything is fine.
Sedins are still here.
Everything is fine. Cartoon where, like, the dog, where it's just like there's fire all around him. It's like, no, this is great. Eric Goodbranson here for a couple more years. Yeah, no, this is excellent. And it's just not getting better. And that's it's surprising that more people aren't kind of up in arms about it. People are very content because they trust Jim Benning as a noted hockey man. So,
well, this summer you have $15 million coming off the books with Henrik, Daniel, and Yossi.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of money for you to do some things if you wanna.
Yossi.
UC Jokinen.
Oh,
UC Jokinen.
I was like, what? You're talking about exactly the kind of player they could use. My goodness.
So there's $15 free.
That's
If you wanna do
alarming.
something.
That's $15 million that are going to be used probably.
You're saying the wrong way?
It's going to be reinvested in the Sedins, though, I think. Because isn't the thing that they're going to bring them back?
I mean, if it's like a 1-year deal, I'm perfectly okay with it because this team isn't going anywhere. And and in Vancouver, whether it's been Linden or Bure, Naslund, it's all these former greats have ended their careers on different teams. It's always weird seeing them in different uniforms. Seeing Matt Sundin in a Canucks uniform.
Oh, yep.
Gross. Which is, it's funny
He
that
feels
Leafs
dirty,
fans
right?
look at that and go, ugh. But, like, he didn't start his career with the Leafs.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It just made it easier because the Nordiques no longer existed,
Yeah.
so it was kind of like it was a little different. You know what I
Very
mean?
interesting.
Because you wouldn't see like Sundin as an Av, right?
Not too many trade trees are like, and then the team stopped existing. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Being in Vancouver and listening to how people talk, one of the most interesting stories, and Elliot Friedman would hate us bringing this up, but was him talking about, and not just him, but many people talking about the Canucks feeding to the media that they were upset about the way that the trade deadline and was being handled and how they were being treated, which it sounds like from you, they're being treated with kid gloves.
Oh, I think they're being pampered. A large segment of the population in Vancouver seems to be content with where the direction is headed with the team. And obviously there's a vocal sort of minority, I'd say, online and message boards that are freaking out about it and kind of calling some of the stuff into question. But yeah, I don't know where Elliot necessarily got that from. He wasn't necessarily reporting that as much as it was his actual opinion, right? That Canucks fans were a bit too harsh on the management.
Right. Well, and I don't know that he was even saying that. I think he was just saying that it had affected. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was something along the lines of it had permeated management,
right?
And that it was casting a shadow on them, and that it was affecting decision making. I believe that was how it was put. Now, he is not the only one to say that.
Yeah. And
they did leak to other media outlets, from what we understand, that they were upset with the way they were being talked about. So, I don't think this doesn't just come from one person, so I wouldn't want to pin it all on Elliot. But it seemed to cause this like mini explosion in Vancouver in terms of, I didn't even know where the arguments were coming from. It seemed like people were having different arguments and different conversations with each other. And is that something that this management team does?
Like I said, I don't know where this is coming from, because when I tell you that they've been the worst team in the league the past 3 years, like, how are you supposed to talk about the situation? It seems pretty bad. Like, they've been worse than teams who are actively bad. So it's not ideal. I think that happens in every market, right? Especially Canadian markets. Like I'm sure in Montreal right now that's happening. In Edmonton, definitely. And that's why you get paid the money you do as a GM, as an assistant GM, as a VP, whatever, to make the difficult decisions and tune that out. And hopefully, as you get better and the team gets better, people will kind of become warmer with the situation. But yeah, right now, I mean, I think people should be very upset with what's going on in Vancouver.
So we sort of talked about how, like, if you had asked me who's been the worst team over the last 3 years, I never would have guessed the Canucks. I would have assumed bottom half for sure, but I never would have said the worst. Worse than Buffalo? There's just no way.
Yeah.
Especially with the McEichel year.
Yeah.
There's just no way. So what has gone wrong, and what do they need? Is the answer everything?
Yeah, I was
want
going
to
to say, the second question is a lot easier. They need everything. When you're the worst team in the league, you can use a bit of everything. The worst thing that happened was them making the playoffs the first year under Jim Benning. Because as you remember, or maybe you don't, but Mike Gillis's last year was the infamous John Tortorella year, which worked out horribly, and the Canucks missed the playoffs. And then Jim Benning inherited that team. And the core was still mostly in place. And it seemed like they were going to go in a different direction with a new GM, especially a draft guy, and they were going to rebuild and do this thing properly. And then they made the playoffs that year. And I think they sort of tricked themselves into thinking they were further ahead in the development than they were. And then they threw a bunch of money at Lou Eriksson and tied up their books and all this stuff. And
God, does that sound familiar?
They trade for Eric Branson. They trade for Brandon Sutter and give him a massive contract. And
I forgot about that. He does have a big deal, doesn't he?
Yeah, and then Nick Bonino's winning Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. Obviously, they also have Crosby and Malkin and a few other guys I've heard of, but Nick Bonino as well. And so it was just that kind of set them back. And then now they're still not really acknowledging the reality of the situation. And that's it's tough to get better when you don't acknowledge that you have a problem to begin with.
So what are the bright spots? You mentioned Pettersson, Besser.
Besser, obviously. I mean, there was a legitimate discussion for him as the Calder when he was scoring a goal every single game. And then obviously now Barzal's running away with it. But I'd say Besser, Pettersson. Other than that, it's not ideal. I mean,
do they have any good, what's the prospect pool looking like other than those two?
They have a goalie prospect in Thatcher Demko who's playing in Utica right now in the AHL. They're hoping that he's going to come up and sort of be the next kind of Corey Schneider. But other than that, it's not ideal because they passed on Matthew Tkachuk, for example, to take Olli Juolevi, and he's still playing overseas. So we don't have anything to show for that yet. Obviously, going back to Benning's first year, they had a chance in Nikolai Ehlers and William Nylander, and they took Jake Virtanen instead, who is a borderline replacement level NHL player at this point, and that's obviously a problem. And Steve, you and I actually, that was the drafted. We did a video in your bed.
Yeah, it was in my bed.
I was gonna say it's not what it sounds like, but that literally happened. We were in your bed recording a video.
Yeah, talking about the draft and recapping it. But what I remember is actually we did. I want to say it was for like Low Tide or something. We did a mock draft.
We did.
And with my pick, I picked Jake Virtanen, and everyone lit me up. But I was like, whatever. He can score. He's a big body. I don't know. The Leafs probably like that. Whatever. That'll be great.
Yeah.
And then when the Canucks picked him, I'm like jumping up and down.
Yeah, I remember that.
Sorry.
I mean, I remember I was really I like William Nylander obviously, but I was big on Nikolai Ehlers at the time, and I remember the pushback was, well, he played with Jonathan Drouin in Halifax. You know, how much of that is who he was playing with, and how much of that actual talent. And now we're seeing in Winnipeg that he'd instantly be the Canucks' most enticing sort of developmental piece and a reason for people to come to games. So, yeah, it's not.
So,
anyways,
how does a draft guy take
let's
Virtanen?
talk about more positive things. Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah,
all right.
Here, I guess last thing before we get to the Coyotes. You wrote that thing.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Did you read the comments?
No.
Okay, good. That's smart. You've been around the block a few times. There were mostly people being like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah,
the Canucks aren't that bad." And then some of them were like, "Well, yeah, the Canucks are obviously bad. You don't need to write about it. Jeez, don't need to be mean." It's like, what?
But if you have the numbers to prove it, how can people disagree with it?
What do you mean? What am I talking about? Read it. Yeah, does that ever piss you off when you put like several charts, 1,500 words, whatever, and people are just like, I don't understand.
Most of the people don't read the articles, though, to be fair. So you just have to accept that. And,
right.
Yeah. I've been told not to read the comments. Sometimes it's too juicy.
Sometimes it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to take it, right? The thing is with you
I've
is
also
at
been
least
told not to have potato chips every day, but they're great.
I get lit up for my opinion from time to time, as everybody does. But the thing about your opinion is it's actually backed up by math. And so, like, I find that fascinating that, like, there's no way around the fact that the Canucks record or total points gained over the last 3 years is the lowest.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. And yet people can still find a way to disagree. And I find that fascinating. It's amazing.
But it's not even like analytics. It's like literally wins and losses.
Yeah.
Not advanced
it was like
analytics.
point
Still
percentage,
analytics.
wasn't it?
It is point. Yeah. It's point. How many points? How many of the possible points in the past 3 years have they accumulated? And no one has accumulated less.
Jesse, you look like the shifty-eyed dog from either who's Family Guy or The Simpsons. And that usually means you have something to say. But I can't tell. Now you're just staring at me silently, so it's weird.
Yeah. I think you made it weird.
You did make it weird.
I think you made it
feel
weird
awkward about it.
I just wanted my friend to say
by
something.
bringing that
I
up.
thought you had something to say. Sorry.
No, nothing?
Coyotes. Did you actually have something that you wanted to talk
that was a joke.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, it was so straight faced. I actually thought, I'm like, he wants to get into the Coyotes.
They've been really
Okay.
good lately. You mentioned the whooping they put on the
Is
Lightning.
Bo Horvat worth $5 million
Ooh, good question.
for the next till 2023? $5.5 million actually.
He's not. The thing is he's exceeded my expectations. I thought he was more like a defensive checking center when he was coming out, and he really improved his draft, his skating, sort of like John Tavares did after his draft class. But I don't think he's a building block. I think he's like, if you have a really good team and you have two or three of those guys already in place, and you have him as like your third line center, then all of a sudden you're cooking. But if you're gonna have Bo Horvat as your number one center, I don't think you're gonna be winning very many hockey games.
Is it a little bit like, and maybe I'm selling him short, but when the Leafs were just like, well, Naz, you're our number one center now.
I think it actually is like that. Like if you put him in the right role and give him a position to succeed, I think Bo Horvat would do great. But when you're asking him to do everything and be the number one guy, that's just
It's a lot.
You're dooming him like from the start.
Another kind of statement along the lines of a team that I think is along the lines of the Canucks here, if I could spit this out, is that Ken Holland said he thinks he'll be back, which we hear that Jeff Blashill will also be back in Detroit next season.
And Holland will potentially be back without a contract, which I don't understand.
Yeah,
I didn't know
he's
you
going to
could
keep
do
coming
that.
to work.
He's just opening himself up to Seattle, I think. I think that's what's going to happen. But
Ken, you don't work here anymore.
No, I'm still here. It's funny because 5 years ago, Ken Holland was seen as the genius general manager in the NHL. And now
Bulletproof.
it's unbelievable the change that's happened, especially in the last 2 years. Is that a management group that needs to go? Is that, and I'm putting that question out to you both. Like, is that a change that needs to happen, or are they just in a downspout and they're trying to get rid of some of the old contracts and it is what it is?
See, it's going to be tough for Detroit. I think they're probably in the worst position of any of these sort of bottom feeder rebuilding teams, because at least with the Canucks or the Coyotes or the Sabres, for the most part, I mean, you mentioned the Canucks have $15 million coming off the books. Like, in theory, if they really were so desperate to be like a borderline playoff team, you could use some of that money and get better. With the Red Wings, like, they have so much money tied up.
Their
Guys
cap
like
is a
Jonathan
nightmare.
Eriksson and Luke Glendening and all these. Like, basically what happened was Ken Holland rewarded all the players he really liked and had good friendships with to like 5-6 year deals. And you can really get into trouble when you do that with fourth liners and third pairing defensemen. And so now, I mean, I know Luke Glendening was like rumored to be, I mean, he's a Babcock guy. And
Boy.
I feel like the Leafs really dodged the bullet there, although we'll see maybe this summer they revisit that. But that's one of those things where it's like, you can find those guys at the AHL level all the time or via trade. They're always available in the bargain bin. So when you lock them up, you're just exposing yourself to so much unnecessary risk. And that's what we're seeing with Detroit now, where even if they wanted to get better in a hurry, I just don't think, like, they fiscally can't accomplish that. They're just going to have to ride this out.
Which is so strange, because one of the proposed things I heard for the way the Red Wings are going to get out of this is, well, they're going to be really active in free agency this summer. I'm like, dude, so the cap just doesn't matter then. Like, it doesn't matter.
Of the players they have signed that make more than $1.4 million, how many of them are free agents at the end of this year? Or
I have it up.
RFAs?
I have it up,
or
so I can't
UFAs?
answer this.
Well, and they got rid of Tatar. 2.
1.
But the best is,
Wow.
like, name some of the names of the guys who are under contract for
Who
like
are
2021.
under contract through next year include Franz Nielsen, Henrik Zetterberg, Nyquist, Darren Helm,
Luke Glendening.
defense,
Yeah, this is still 20. Most of those guys are
those are, like,
2021.
way into the future.
Cronwall,
Yeah. Yep.
Erickson, Trevor Daly,
Kaiser, I think.
Kaiser, yeah. So
I did not understand the Trevor Daly signing
they're bringing
this
back
summer.
the whole squad.
I didn't.
that didn't
I
make
didn't
any
understand it
sense.
for him. I didn't understand it for them. I got my cup.
Right.
I'm done.
I'll take my money. He's making 3.1.
Good for him.
Yeah, this is a mess, and
It's a problem.
yeah, like, you look at Zetterberg is signed. He's 37 now, so even if he retires,
Well,
isn't
so
it-
they're gonna get into cap trouble with that as well, because he's already made it clear, I think, that he's planning to go play in Sweden,
oh,
because he's got one of those backdiving contracts where, like, he's making like $1 million
Yeah.
over the final couple of years
oh,
of his
so
deal.
just
So
retire and get out of here.
but then the league is going to punish the Red Wings for that, so they're basically going to have a sunk cost on their books and not even have Henrik Zetterberg in their lineup.
And then
Like
you have to
Datsuk.
and then you have to ship that off to the Coyotes again.
Yeah,
which
pretty
they did
much.
last time.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's the thing. To accomplish that, they're going to have to give up draft capital, and they're a team that desperately needs more picks.
Man.
Wow.
So just like an endless cycle.
So, like, when you look at the trade deadline, same thing with Goodbranson.
Yeah.
Mike Green is like it's like a perfect parallel. Two teams that are in nowhere, and then Mike Green doesn't get moved. And, like, I don't care if you don't get your price.
Yeah.
If you don't get your price, fine. This is a guy that will not be here next year if your team is intelligent about things. And Mike Green's a good defenseman for what he does and at his age, but you're not bringing him back to the Detroit Red Wings.
No. Well, and to be fair, I know he was, like, injured at the time, and then after the deadline, he had surgery and he's out for season. So I'm not sure, maybe teams kind
Oh.
of balked at giving up anything because he couldn't pass a physical or something.
That's
a
fair.
little bit like
That's fair.
Parenteau in the year where the Leafs
Okay.
finished
But,
last.
but to be fair, like, I find it hard to. They could have got like a 4th or 5th rounder probably. Like, I feel like it was one of those things where it's like they just tried to save face. It's like, oh, we're not going to get anything of value, so we're just going to keep Mike Green just because it's not worth our time. At least they got multiple picks for Thomas Tatar, so that's something.
Mhm.
Whereas the Canucks turned Eric Goodbranson and Thomas Vanek into literally not UC Okinen's expiring contract, I guess.
I don't know how that's all they got. But you know what? Okay. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, all we're doing is ripping on all the bad teams.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes what's interesting about teams is why they're bad. And I
how
think that's,
they get there.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's a
as Leafs
cautionary
fans,
tale,
we're
right?
obsessed with it. Yeah. Like, I'm like, hey, this all sounds very familiar. I
We
feel like I
spent the
have a
first 3
doctorate.
years of the show dissecting how the Leafs got there, how bad they were, and why they were there.
What I want to know about is some of the best teams in the league, and everyone was going gaga over, oh my God, I want the Preds to play the Jets in the first round so bad. But everyone for months now has been just glowing about the Bruins.
Yep.
what makes them so good, I guess, outside of the monster line, because that much is obvious.
Well, that has a lot to do with it, obviously. I think some of their younger guys like Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen have stepped up and given them some secondary scoring, which they didn't have in years past. But, come postseason, we often hear how you need the star players to really accomplish anything because those are the guys that are ultimately going to win the games for you. I think sometimes that can be overblown a bit, but in cases like this, if the Bruins can basically for like 25 of the 60 minutes just have Bergeron, Marchand, Chara and McAvoy out there, like, the ice is just going to be slanted in the direction they're going in horribly the entire time. So when you have that kind of luxury, you really just need the other guys to just not completely drown when they're out there.
Yeah.
And they've shown they're capable of that. And Rask has kind of come back into form. He's not necessarily a Vezina candidate, but at least he's not a liability anymore. And you sort of put all that together, and it's a very intriguing team. I think it's been them and the Preds as the two best teams in the league for the past 30 plus games or so.
Do you think the Bruins are better than the Tampa Bay Lightning, skill-wise? Are they a deeper team?
It's different. I think there's no right answer there.
Okay.
I think the Lightning can potentially be scarier just because, as we've seen, they can just score 4 goals in a matter of a couple minutes, and you just don't know what happened. And all of a sudden, the game's just over. The series is over. You don't know what hit you, right?
Yeah.
The Bruins are going to be much more methodical, and they're going to wear you down, and they're just going to control possession the entire time and kind of suck the life out of you. So it's sort of pick your poison. I don't think either is an ideal matchup for the Leafs in round 1, which I assume is why you're asking.
No, I'm actually asking because I think they're going to meet in round 2. So it's kind of like it's not. Listen, it's not because I don't think the Leafs are a strong team, but I think they're in tough against either team.
Yeah.
And it sucks that they have to play them. I think it sucks. It's unfair, but it's almost as though it's so funny. For the teams that finish second and third in that division, the road to the Stanley Cup gets easier in rounds 2 and 3.
Yep.
Get through the first round.
So where are you guys at with this? Because I know that it's been a big talking point, sort of the playoff structure and the seeding, and if we could potentially go to a 1 versus 16 matchup, something like that, or even if we get back to conferences, or obviously there's like the European one and the Swedish Elite League where you pick your own opponent, which I am in favor
I think
of.
that's amazing.
I kind of prefer that.
That would be
just
so
being
fun.
in the media, the stories are just insane, right?
Oh,
Imagine someone picking you first.
And then you lose, or they lose?
Well, then there's the ultimate bulletin board material. I mean, come on. It's like, they want to play us? All right.
And who
love
gets
it.
to pick? I would love to know. Is it the coach? Captain? GM? Captain would be a hell of a pick.
Silent vote.
Oh my God! Can you
Silent
imagine
vote,
that?
yeah.
And then a third of the locker room doesn't get the team that they wanted to play, and all of a sudden, you're right. It is.
They're coming back
endless.
in the locker room just side-eyeing him. I told you not to play him.
freaking told you
not to play him.
How would
Media
Lou
magic.
Lamoriello?
That is
How would
media
Lou
magic.
Lamoriello manage that?
We don't have to play anyone in the first round.
We can sit this one out.
Yeah, we get a bye. We get a bye.
He'd make it happen.
They have a big champagne party.
Yeah.
No one even won the game.
Since we're on it, what and it looks like it's going to be Boston.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty hard for it not to be Boston.
Yeah.
No. If Boston wins their next 2 games, they're ahead of Tampa.
Yeah, they have a couple
Because
games
they have
in
2
hand,
games.
right?
They have
Oh, they have
8
2 games in
games
hand.
left, and they're 2 games back. So if they win,
Okay.
if they just win 2 games, they're in
Tampa.
first.
My wife's pool has Vasilevsky as her goalie, and I can tell you they have been bad.
Yeah.
So then, okay, based on what you've seen,
Yeah.
what's a better matchup for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I think the Lightning are honestly a better matchup. And the reason I say that is because, especially if Boston has home ice advantage in that series, which it looks like they will, they can just, in those 3 or 4 home games they play, it's just going to be Bergeron against Matthews every second he's on the ice.
Unbelievable.
And, I know Kadri's been awesome this season, and the Leafs have some other weapons, but we've sort of seen what happens when Matthews isn't in the lineup, and that would be the equivalent if he had to face Bergeron the entire time.
Would that
I think
cancel
they-
Bergeron out though too? Because he's
I
so
don't-
glued
I
to.
don't think so. I think the Bruins would win that matchup, not as decidedly as they're winning other matchups, but it would still be in their favor, and then it's kind of a wash the rest of the way. And I think ultimately that's in favor of the Bruins.
And what about the depth at forward? Are the Leafs, in terms of they have finally figured out their 4th line, although with Andres Janssen coming out and Komarov coming back in.
Unfortunately, some nights their 4th line looks like their best. So I don't know if that's a recipe for success.
Right.
But
But
4th
fourth and third,
good.
you've got JVR. He is a power play specialist.
Right.
We understand that. You've got Kadri and Marleau and Marner.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Their first line is better than our first line.
Right.
Fine.
Yep.
What about the second and third?
No, for sure. The Leafs would have an advantage there. I think it's how much would you trust those guys to basically win that series for you. Whereas against the Lightning, I feel like especially a 5-on-5, they could control those matchups a little bit better. Obviously, Lightning's power play would be something the Leafs would have to deal with. But as you mentioned, Vasilevsky, and he's admitted this himself, this is his first year being the number 1 goalie, and he's really struggled of late, and it looks like he's really kind of wearing down under the pressure of the workload. So if he doesn't get it back come postseason, all of a sudden that's a liability for them, and I think that might make the Lightning an easier matchup. But
Man,
Could be
please,
really
no
interesting.
one cut that soundbite and play it back after round 1.
the best part is they play each other next
Well,
too.
how about this? No matter what, it's going to be a great series.
They should just do like a 3-way round robin.
That'd be
Yeah,
kind of fun.
They all just keep playing each other.
I'd be down for that. I think it's interesting. The funny thing, so when you said the Lightning, all logic, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You'd probably rather play the Lightning. But then I'm like, well, the Leafs won their season series against the Bruins. But the strange thing about that is in 2 of the games that they won, at least, Matthews wasn't even in the lineup.
Right.
And I think in
The
both
Leafs are
of
better
those
without
games,
Matthews. I mean, that's the only logical
exactly.
conclusion.
I think in both those games, Bergeron might not have been in the lineup either.
Right.
At least one of them he wasn't.
Yeah.
So I don't have a proper those are the 2 biggest factors,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have a real good
And
grasp.
there's also
on,
playoff Marchand too.
Oh, for crying out loud! Regular season Marchand's pretty damn good too.
Yeah.
So I just don't have a proper grip on how a Toronto-Boston series would go.
I know there's Leafs fans probably screaming right now, like the Leafs dominated them in the matchup last year when both Matthews and Bergeron played, but I think different circumstances, different teams, and honestly, I think those regular season matchups can be a bit overblown. Like you can sort of see how the chess pieces fit, but ultimately, the playoffs are an entirely different animal.
Sens used to dominate the Leafs going back 15 years or whatever. Oh my God, just make it to the second round, man. They haven't been there since 2004.
In the
Just
Eastern
wanna see it.
Conference, who's your sleeper pick? Who's the team that no one's talking about that you're like, don't ignore these guys?
I'm gonna
Do you want me to go through the teams that are on? Okay,
let's
so we
go
got
through it.
so obviously in the Atlantic, Tampa, Boston, Toronto. Metropolitan is Washington, Pittsburgh, Columbus, and the wild cards right now, and we'll include Florida in this too because they're a point out. Philly, New Jersey, Florida.
So I think Columbus is the most intriguing teams of those you mentioned. Obviously,
Really?
I'm not counting the Penguins as a dark horse.
No.
I think of the teams of the Panthers, the Flyers. I think I'd include the Capitals because I'm not very high on them this year. The Blue Jackets are really interesting. They've been playing very well lately. I think they have the best goalie in the world in Sergei Bobrovsky. Artemi Panarin has been a legitimate superstar this season for them. That top pairing of Werenski and Seth Jones, you can make the argument is one of the best, if not the best pairings in the league. So all of a sudden, you look at all that, there's a lot to like. Unfortunately, they have a lot of demons with the Penguins, and it looks like they're headed for a first round
Matchup with the Penguins.
Oh, that'll be
and
that's
fun.
like the one.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one where I think no matter who the Penguins play, this is my rule. I'm picking the Penguins because I don't want to be the schmuck that picks against Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. If they lose,
Again.
I'll be like, all right, that's fine. But the past 2 years, I've been like, you know what? I like other teams better. They're not quite as good at 5-on-5. It's like, no, they have 2 of the best 4 players in the world. So
It's just different.
Yeah.
So something that has been creeping into my mind as of late. So the final wild card spot is the Devils. I think the Panthers actually control their own destiny there.
Yeah,
Yep.
they do.
they do. They have
They
games in
game
hand
in
as well, right?
The Panthers have been so hot for
Yeah.
so long, and Tampa's been falling off. First of all Florida first round would be really cool. But
Oh.
second of all, what are the odds the Panthers pull it off against the Lightning? And all of a sudden Leafs are going to play the winner of Tampa Boston. Or sorry, they're if
Tampa.
they do win the first
They'll-
round,
they'd
they're going
have
to
to
play
play
one of
Tampa.
Tampa or Boston anyway. What are the odds Tampa's not there, or Boston's not there potentially?
I mean, I would still pick the Lightning in that series, for example, but I think
Yeah.
they definitely have a puncher's chance. Are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
podcast?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah, sure.
No, with the Panthers, basically they realized that their depth was complete shit.
Yeah.
And instead of rolling 4 lines, they basically just cut it down during this past 15, 20 games, and they're just playing Barkov and Trocheck's lines like 22 minutes each.
Barkov's so good.
And they're basically just like,
Yeah.
we're going to ride these top 2 lines and see how far they take us. Now, both those guys are under 25. They seem to be handling it very well. We'll see if they wear down here in the final couple weeks of the season, but they seem to be holding up so well so far. And so basically, they're looking good whenever those two guys are on the ice, and they're always on the ice these days. So that bodes well for the Panthers. They have good goaltending.
Reimer. No, the Luongos had a legendary season for his age.
Yeah, so it's wide open. The East is super wide open. Whereas in the West, I think it's like two teams have very clearly divided themselves. In the East, like there's like five teams.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a free for all.
And two teams pulling ahead in the West, and they'll face off in the second round.
Gotta love the format.
It's pretty bad. But I don't fault them for trying it. It was worth a shot, but it's not working. Get rid of it.
Well, here's the reason why I asked if you guys like this format, because we haven't talked about this, but there is the argument that, you want to see the best teams play as early as possible because they're going to be healthy. And we always see come the postseason, there's this attrition where everyone's going to lose their best players eventually. And guys are playing injured and definitely less than 100%. And the series isn't necessarily as good as it possibly could have been, whereas maybe in a first or second round matchup, they're just going to be firing on all cylinders, completely healthy, and all of a sudden that's the best possible hockey. Yeah. Now, it's not satisfying that come the Western Conference Final, for example, whoever wins that is going to be playing someone who's inferior. But
and it's from a just a purely television ratings perspective, it's really not good for the NHL to have Boston, Toronto, or Tampa go out in the first round, and one of them will, and then probably one of them will go out in the second round too. And Tampa's ratings are from what I understand, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. They're becoming one of the better markets ratings wise. Like, Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Boston, and those markets, New York.
Probably be great if they played the Panthers then.
Yeah, it would be amazing. It would be great for the Panthers.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this format to me, and what's interesting about this conference, is no one's talking about the Capitals.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they are. They are still a 100-point team for sure. They are not the loaded up Megazord team that we saw last year when they went out and just got all the extra pieces. Yeah. But are they a team that should be taken seriously now because the pressure's off?
I kind of like this story that's emerging where it's like for the past 4 years, this is the Capitals' year. And there's a lot of like statistical evidence to support that take. Yeah. And then they lose in the second round to the Penguins. And then this is the year where it's like, no, they're not that good. And they're just running through the Eastern Conference and win the Cup. And that'd be so NHL. It's the 1 year we're finally off their scent. The Capitals come through. I mean, they still have the star players. Ovechkin, I think this happens with star players. We sometimes kind of take them for granted when they've been so good for so long. But like Ovechkin, just what he's done in terms of just the percentage of goals he's scoring for the Capitals, I believe he's leading the league again this year in that category.
His way to 50.
Yeah, he's going to score 50 goals. And we've done this dance a couple of times where it's like, it looks like he's past his prime. He's on the decline. And then he comes back with a 50-goal season. They don't have the depth they've had in the past few years, and once again, they're probably gonna have to play the Penguins in round 2. So those are the two big arguments against the Capitals, I'd say.
So I guess my big beef with this playoff format is it was meant to rightfully, and it should have worked out better, boost rivalries. I think the only one
rivalries,
the only one it's boosted is Pittsburgh-Washington, and it sucked because it's been one way. Like, the fact that Pittsburgh hasn't played, have they played Philly since the format changed? I don't know if they have.
I think the last time they played was that crazy series where the Flyers actually won, where it was like 8-7 was every game.
And that was the best.
Crosby fought
so
Drew.
Absurd. Yeah, that series is outrageous.
That was unbelievable.
I think that's the last time they played in the playoffs, though.
And then I think the format switched the next year, and they haven't played. Yeah. And that's like my favorite rivalry in hockey, and it hasn't happened.
But isn't it funny, though? When you try to manufacture these, because I remember it was about 10 or 15 years ago, they moved to where you were playing your division guys. I think it was 6 times or 8 times a season. Yep. You were playing them all the time. Yeah. And now I think it's down to 5 or 6.
6.
And they did that on purpose, and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's like teams. I remember last year the Canucks and Leafs hated each other, and we were looking forward to the next game because they hated each other. They played like twice a year.
Thank you, Nazem Kadri.
Right,
man. Like Rogers should just send flowers to Kadri's house because he managed to piss off every Western Canadian team.
It was awesome
in the first meeting, and then they go on to the second, and it's like the event of the season.
Yeah. But I think we got to get away from this whole city-to-city rivalry because there is a perceived rivalry between Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa and Toronto,
right?
And probably Montreal, Ottawa as well. But what's happened is that none of those teams have been good at the same time. Yeah. It's usually the rivalry, like the Leafs used to have a huge rivalry with the Islanders when the Islanders were good and the Leafs were not great.
All it takes is one playoff series.
Yes, but that's the point, is that you can't manufacture this stuff, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think it has to happen organically. And if it just takes one playoff series, then technically, like, rivalries don't really exist because all you need is the one series. So it's like we should keep seeing different combinations and see what sticks.
Yeah.
I hate to pause. I absolutely cannot hold it.
No, okay, you gotta
I'm
go
sorry.
figure.
We had such a good rhythm going.
All right, so let's switch to the Western Conference. I hope you had a good pee.
I did. I feel like I can start the show now.
Seamless
Jeez.
The sleeper team, the team that no one's talking about, because we know, Nashville and Winnipeg, they're getting a lot of play. But you've got Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota in the Central, and then in the Pacific, you've got Vegas, obviously a story, San Jose, Anaheim, and then in the wild card, we'll say Los Angeles, Colorado. And I can't ignore the St. Louis Blues, who are a point out and control their destiny because they've got a game in hand and game in hand on Colorado, 2 games in hand on LA.
Yeah.
Like we all predicted.
St. Louis traded another good player, and all of a sudden are playing really great.
They're like the Blues and Doug Armstrong are like the bizarro Jim Benning and Vancouver Canucks, where it's like they're actually good, but they're rebuilding. It's like they're acquiring first-round picks, trading their good players, still winning games. It's like, what is happening
It's
here?
amazing. It's amazing.
The Western Conference wildcard picture is so bizarre because I swear 2 weeks ago it was like 6 teams deep.
Yeah.
And
Calgary's officially out.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was 2 teams that were right in it, like teams I thought would maybe make it, at least one of them. Both Dallas and Calgary completely fell to hell.
Yep.
They did. And
I don't understand.
And it was Dallas's trip through here, I believe, wasn't it? It was Ottawa, Toronto.
They lost to the Leafs, right?
Yeah, they went.
So-
They went on
Shootout.
a bad swing through. That was the beginning of the end for them because they
I
had.
was at that game. That was
That was
a
a good
shootout.
game. It was back and
That's right.
forth.
Yeah, it was a great game.
It was
Fun.
it's trash hockey, but yeah, it was fun.
Well, that's the thing. That's been my one complaint about the Stars this season. I don't know how much you guys have caught of them, but that was like the one rare instance where they were that fun 2014-15 version of the Stars. It sort of swept the hockey world by storm. This year, it's been sort of Hitchcock hockey, and it's like they were actually really good at the start of the year, but it was these boring 2-1 games, slow paced, and they've really fallen off. Ben Bishop got injured, and Kari let one in.
He was really bad. Curry letting him
You
in.
picking up what I'm putting down there?
But yeah.
And so they're out now. The Flames don't even have their first or second round pick this year, and they're out.
Are they the first? When was the last time? I guess it's the first time since they changed the lottery format. They're the first team to potentially have given up a lottery pick.
Yeah, it's pretty rare.
Like
Trying to
since
think.
Because lottery picks were like the top 5, right?
Since the Kessel trade?
well, was
Yeah.
that
I'm sure
a
there's-
lottery?
I'm sure this
though?
happened
I
since.
Of
don't know
course,
if that
it was the Leafs. Of course.
Was that a lottery though, or did it just fall for the last place team?
I honestly don't remember.
Anyway, no, because the Islanders got 2 shots.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And if one of those lands on first overall, I imagine it'll be a lot easier to convince John Tavares to resign. So
How about
they
first
have a
and
lot invested
second?
there.
Could potentially be first and second, even second and third. Who cares?
Be the-
One of them, third.
It would be pretty now.
If it's Calgary's
Islanders
pick.
luck, it'll be 14-15.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow.
But with
And Lou Lamoriello gets the pick.
the conference, what's the team of the ones I've mentioned? I'll name them again: Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Vegas, San Jose, Anaheim, LA, Colorado, St. Louis. What's the team that you're like, man, don't sleep on these guys?
Well, other than the top 2 teams, which you already mentioned, that's a tough one. I don't really know what to make of any of those California teams.
Like
I
San
have to be
Jose,
honest.
Anaheim?
Yeah, San Jose's been really good since the trade deadline, acquiring Evander Kane. They're going to get Joe Thornton back. The Ducks, I mean, their season just been so bizarre.
It's
I
weird.
think Derek Grant was their number 1 center for a big chunk of the season.
Are they the best worst team or the worst best
I think
team?
they're
or-
actually good if they're
Yeah.
healthy, but they rely on John Gibson a lot. Now he's been up to the task so far, but
Randy Carlisle hockey.
Yeah, no, there's a lot.
Boyer quick.
There's a lot of they're getting outshot 40-25 for winning, and it's like, oh well, I mean, they figured out the formula here clearly.
The Leafs do it too.
Yeah.
And then when they outshoot teams, they lose. So.
So,
that damn Corsi.
like, what of the 3 California teams?
Yeah.
You've got LA, which actually is tied for Anaheim, but I think their season. No, Anaheim's got a game in hand, so they're ahead. But of those 3 teams, and they're pretty close in the standings, who's the best one?
LA could still miss.
Yeah.
LA could still miss easily.
Flip a coin. I don't know.
Anaheim could still miss, guys.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, it's
Easily.
crazy that St. Louis could steal one of those spots.
I love it. I think it's great. No, you know what I want to know about? Forget the California teams. What I have such a hard time envisioning is Vegas winning a playoff series, and they're one of the top seeds. But I had a hard time envisioning them winning a single game.
Yeah.
or not finishing last. And I'm looking at the standings right now on the screen. I see them in first, and I still don't believe it.
Okay, well, let's go through the matchups, the potential matchups as of today. If the playoffs started today,
Gonna completely change.
So Vegas versus Colorado. Who's winning that series?
So I don't know if you guys caught this. They played a home and home over the weekend, and they were the two of the best games I've watched all year.
Really?
So I'm all in on this matchup.
Okay.
Both teams makes no sense. They should not be nearly this good. Obviously, both great stories. The two biggest surprises in the league, probably. They both just play so fast, and I think a lot of that masks talent deficiencies, where they just don't give you a chance to sort of rest up and load up on their players, so they just keep coming at you in waves. It's like as soon as you get the puck in your defensive zone, everyone is just flying in transition, and they're just like it's a track meet more than a hockey game, and it's made. I hope the playoffs don't really like water it down and both teams slow down trying to win quote unquote playoff hockey. But if they play the way they play those two games, I am all in on that series. And that's Vegas would probably. I mean, they'd be favored. Obviously, they have home ice. I think that's a series they could win.
It's got to be the single most unlikely playoff series coming into a season ever.
Yep.
It's an expansion team facing off against a team that finished last.
Yep.
How?
And every expansion team from now on will be based against what Las Vegas did. And that's what's crazy.
Realistic, I think.
Yeah, really. Vegas, LA.
So I was going to say, if they draw LA or Anaheim, I like them in both those series as well because I think they just have too much speed and they're just going to skate laps around those two teams.
St. Louis.
St. Louis is interesting. They're sort of similar to LA and they want to play that physical brand of hockey, but they do have guys who can get up and down the ice as well. So I think that might be a tougher matchup. And then San Jose is sort of like that as well. But at worst, it's going to be a coin flip, which is, crazy. Other than, if we get Nashville versus Winnipeg in round 2, that means Vegas could conceivably get a pretty easy path to the Western Conference Final, which...
Can you imagine?
The league would love that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at some of these home games, I want to go cover that Western Conference Final. That seems pretty fun out there.
Oh, come on. Everybody does.
So
people barely survived last year, so I don't know how they'll do it with Vegas.
So Vegas has this really interesting way that they're going to prevent any fans from trying to capitalize on foreigners coming in and and buying the seats, right?
Okay.
Because obviously Vegas is a town where people go to party.
Yep.
So they want their fans to hang on to it. And here's what they say. They have so Vegas Golden Knights full season ticket members will automatically be enrolled in the Knights Vow. What did I say, Kings? Knights Vow, which provides the most significant price savings off a single game ticket price. As part of the Knights Vow program, members will receive tickets electronically via flash sheets shortly after the date and times of the first home playoff games are set. Resale through StubHub, the Golden Knights' exclusive authorized secondary partner, will not be available under this option. So you get an enormous discount, but you cannot resell. Full season ticket members may elect to opt out of their Knights Vow in order to have the opportunity to sell their tickets through the Golden Knights' exclusive authorized secondary partner, StubHub. I guess that's the exact wording that they have to use. However, their savings off a single game ticket under this option will not be as significant as those who are enrolled in option 1 above. So basically, they're giving you a huge discount not to have you sell. And I think that's really interesting. For a town like that,
Yep.
I mean, Ottawa should probably look at something like that. Don't you think?
Ottawa should just look at getting asses in seats. I think it's a little different.
Yeah.
But
Build a new stadium.
I see where you're going.
Yeah.
New
Get a new
stadium.
arena.
Get out of there. They've done millions of dollars into that place. And sorry.
I think a couple of years ago, the Predators did something similar when they were playing the Blackhawks. I think they blacked it out so then if you were from the state of Illinois, you can buy tickets or something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, makes sense.
It's interesting. So Shay Webber came up today. And Shea Weber's foot specifically came up today. And what's interesting about it is he broke it on the first game of the season, blocking a shot.
That's what's interesting about his foot. It's broken.
It's broken.
Yeah.
But he played 27 games?
26.
Yeah.
26.
And
it was injured enough that it screwed up his tendons. And that was the issue, and that's why they had to shut him down. And he can't even put weight on his foot still. And I went back and forth with this today because I sent it to you in order to go on a rant like, typical Habs, what the hell were they thinking? Breaks his foot in the first game. Why did they let him play through it? They're such idiots. And what changed my mind about it is someone just sent me a picture of Shea Weber and his face. And I was like, I wouldn't want to tell that face you're done for the season.
But that's sort of your job, in all seriousness.
Yeah, but look at him. He's scary.
What's a broken foot take to heal? 6 weeks max?
Well, it depends on the severity of the break, I suppose. They thought it was only a fracture.
Okay, so it was hard for them to pinpoint? Was that what it was?
I think what I read was the MRI didn't reveal anything too serious, so they just tried to go through it. And I guess the boot of the skate kind of protects you from injuring it further, but the issue was the tendons.
Right.
What's incredible to me, the Habs, after the season they've had, just like with Carey Price being injured a couple years ago, they're going, well, gosh, if we didn't have these injuries, we'd probably be better. And Weber was on pace with a broken foot for 19 goals and 50 points.
Wow. A lot.
So can you even blame them for thinking that? I mean, I can. Here's a list of why. But they would be better with a healthy Shea Weber, which they didn't have
Right.
at all. I don't.
Is that enough to take them out of the basement in the playoffs, though? I don't think so.
Maybe not. It's enough to make them better.
Sure.
The problem is Carey Price's contract kicks in this summer.
Yeah.
And it's the last year that they have Max Pacioretty on probably the league's best non-ELC value deal, I'd say. So
Definitely one of the best.
So they're going to start paying for some of those guys. And
Are you going to get another career best from Brendan Gallagher? And
right. Yeah, it's not great.
I'll still be there.
That's
Yeah.
a great way to describe it in Montreal, is that it's not a great situation. It's I mean, they got tons of cap
In a
room.
lot of Canadian markets, I mean, good thing Winnipeg's having the season they are, because bosses at Sportsnet would not be very happy with what's going on right now. I mean, other than the Leafs, it's like you look what's going on. Like Senators, Oilers, Flames, Canucks.
Yeah.
Well, what I love is, I get these comments. I suppose you don't. This is, what's with all the Leafs coverage? And it's like, well, A, people read it. B, they're good.
Yeah.
And there's 7 teams. 5 are bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want? I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, 4 second round picks from Montreal.
Ooh,
it's not too bad.
That's good.
That's right. That's awesome.
I'm trying to think of a team in the league that has done everything wrong. Like, we can find good things about every team,
Right.
and that's their good thing. Is it enough to propel them into relevancy, into contention at some point in the near future?
What Montreal seems to need, and what the Leafs needed until Matthews came along, was a number 1 center. And I mean, they got the goaltending thing, and I know that's what everybody needs, but they don't have anything close to it.
Yeah.
They don't do they have a number 2? And do they have a good
Dunno.
And that's the problem. It seems right down the middle. You just
Gouch?
yeah. They'd never give him a shot. And I know that there's the whole Tavares to Montreal thing. That whole thing happening. There's Tavares to Toronto. There's Tavares everywhere. He probably resigns in New York. But what's a team? What do they even do? Like, what can you do?
Well, we talk about Colorado and Vegas as being like the 2 of the most sort of uplifting, surprising stories in the positive direction. Are the Canadians the year they have had the most disappointing?
I think Calgary's got to be more disappointed. I expected Montreal to be bad.
Yeah, because with Calgary, there was optimism, whereas with Montreal, heading in, we're like, this is not clever what
Right.
you're doing.
Right.
And then it ended up going really
Calgary
bad.
was also in a playoff spot
That's
4
true.
weeks ago.
That's true.
And then they've gone off.
And they gave up their
I
first
think.
and second to trade for Hamonic, who hasn't really helped them. The reason why I brought that up is just because I feel like this Habs team has really invested a lot in this group of players, like signing Carl Alsner this summer. Obviously, the Weber trade. It's like a lot of stuff where it's like we're trying to win right now. So when that's your goal and you don't accomplish that, I feel like that's pretty disappointing.
It is weird, watching an NHL team realize they've whiffed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like in real time, you're just watching it on a day-by-day basis, just like, ugh.
Yeah, the Habs were at the craps table, and they said, let it ride on made-up centers, and it came up snake eyes, and they're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
Should they have gone after Duchesne?
They should have done anything.
Turris.
That was the strangest thing about their season, is they had all the space, and everyone's like, when's the hammer going to drop? When's Bergevin going to be crazy? And he didn't do anything. You had a tweet, I think it was earlier in the season, Bergevin has this amazing record of the best and worst trades ever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember his good ones. I know he's had some, I just forget.
I mean, he's made some under the radar sneaky good ones, like stealing Jeff Petrie from Edmonton for nothing, essentially.
That's right,
Like he's done stuff like that where it's like, oh, this guy's actually pretty smart. He's on top of it. Yeah. And then obviously, I think his biggest trades have been his most egregious ones, which is the problem.
Boy, does he go for it.
Do you want to talk about the Oilers at all?
Oh, I was hoping we got to get the Flames.
Part
and
of the
Oilers.
reason I want to talk
When I
about
was
the
saying the
Canucks so
most
much.
disappointing teams, I was hoping you guys would be like, no, it's the Oilers.
One of the reasons
I
I,
guess
wanted
they've been
to talk
disappointing
about
for so long.
the Canucks so much. Well, yeah, they've been disappointing for so long. But we talk about the Oilers all the time.
Yeah.
And, we started to get tweets from people like, man, why don't you pick on someone else?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, fine. Fine. But I guess, we'll talk to a smart guy about the Oilers. They could be in the playoffs next year, right?
Yeah, it's crazy that they're not in the playoffs this year. They have the
On
best player in the
McDavid's
world.
contract.
They have the best player in the world making under $1 million.
Is it the
Potentially winning his second straight
Yeah.
scoring title.
Yeah.
Is it the fact the goaltender's down or was down?
Yep.
It couldn't be Andre Sekera. It could not be just
No.
him.
Oh, that's what I
But
keep saying, yeah.
but they have what is it? The league worst power play historically bad
Penalty kill.
penalty kill. Sorry, it's just like terrible
I
penalty
don't know
kill.
if it still is.
It got
I
a
haven't checked
little
on that.
better.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Well, because
yeah.
of
It's
how
not-
could it not?
It was at 50% or
It's
something.
still
wasn't it?
historically
When you're
bad,
historically
but
bad,
it's not
it's-
the basement of historic.
Right. So if they were just mediocre,
Yeah.
that's a huge improvement.
Yep.
And they can be. But what's it going to take for Edmonton to become a dominant team again? 'Cause remember, Vegas had them as the odds-on favorite for the Cup this year.
Yeah, here's a crazy idea. Stop trading away your best players. That's would be my first recommendation.
might
I
be a
cannot
good
wait for Oscar
transition.
Klefbom to
Yeah.
be in Toronto. I'm so excited.
Oh, my God. Or Nuge.
Or Nuge. Maybe Nuge. Maybe.
Nuge.
What does that mean? Do you hang on to a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins?
Well, I certainly wouldn't trust Peter Chiarelli to be the one trading him. I mean, he hasn't shown anything in his track record to suggest that he would win that trade. I think there's an argument to be made that the Oilers could be better off trading Ryan Nugent-Hopkins even in a 1-for-1 for a certain type of player. I don't think there's any reason to have faith that they're going to get that player that's going to make them better. I feel like it's going to be one of those, and then it's going to be a smear job when he leaves. You're going to find out that he was partying too much and all this stuff, which
Boy,
seems
there
to
really
happen
is
with
a
every
recipe,
guy. And
huh?
it's just like,
Well,
Rinse and repeat.
that brings us, I guess, perfectly into what happened.
that's why I'm broadcasting professional right there.
just throws us right at it.
There we go.
There was an interview with George Laraque on a station in Quebec City with a radio guy named Radio Ego, and this was all in French Canadian. And
French
Quebecois.
Canadian, not French.
If you ask anybody from France, it's different.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in French, and so I had it translated, and so the host goes on a bit of a. I don't want to read the whole thing because it's literally a paragraph long. How he gets to his question about Peter Chiarelli and about the Hall Larson trade a couple years ago. And it is almost like they kind of knew that they were going in this direction, so he tried to weave a narrative. But there's a lot of English translations that change the sentencing. So I'll skip right to George Laraque's part.
Well, and I guess the context is, how come this radio station in Montreal is talking about this, Edmonton, New Jersey trade?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's because Hall was offered to the Habs, allegedly?
For PK.
How? That would have been an insane deal. And how weird is it that they were both traded on the same day and not for each other
Yeah.
after all this?
In horrible, unrelated
Would you
trades.
have done,
Oh, yeah.
Would you have done Weber for Larson?
Yeah. Like, I still love the, I think it was Scott Wheeler tweeted after the Hall trade. He goes, wow, this is the biggest trade of like the last decade. Boom! That lasted for like 15 minutes tops. Unbelievable. But yeah, sorry, Adam. Go
So they
ahead.
ask, why didn't he go for that? So here's what George Laraque said. And this is, again, a translation. The thing is, people don't know, and I'm going to tell it, but when the Oilers traded Taylor Hall had off-ice problems, and he went to rehab that summer. And when he went to rehab, the information was spread through the NHL. So when the Oilers tried to trade him, the value on him was lower because of it. So again, I'm going to stumble through this because it's a French to English translation. So
Yeah, well, I mean, geez, don't be subtle, George.
so he continues. Literally the announcer goes, "Oh, okay," and then George continues. He says,
Oh, okay.
and it's a little like the Cassian situation. When you trade a dude and the whole NHL knows about the rehab situation, of course his value drops. And Taylor Hall had to change the script because there are things that I can't say on the air, but he really had absolutely no choices but to leave Edmonton. When you go somewhere else,
What can you say on the air, George?
and
Jeez.
you are the first round pick like Taylor Hall. It's like for Cassian when they sent him off to Edmonton and they said, why wasn't he like that in Montreal? When you have a second opportunity, you take it. Cassian did. Taylor Hall did. Today, Taylor Hall is how he should have been playing in Edmonton. He had bad friends. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in Edmonton. Let's agree on that. The dude, even with his off-ice problems, was making 50 or 60 points a year, easily without trying. But with discipline and grabbing the second opportunity, this dude is now a point per game. This is Taylor Hall. This is why he was drafted in the first round. And when you look at the whole situation, it's just normal. Yes, it's easy to say that trade for Larson was a steal. On the other side, if he were to continue to act the way he did in Edmonton, he would not have this opportunity. We could also be saying Larson was a steal. This is when the Oilers traded him. Don't forget there are blah blah blah. So I'm going to skip forward just a little bit. He says, "Then I'm going to bring you 2 years back. Remember when this started? When Subban got injured and finished and didn't finish. Sorry, and finished as in finished the season, didn't finish the year. We started talking about a potential trade between Subban and it was Subban for Taylor Hall." And when the Larson for Hall trade was done, many people were arguing, look, we could have had Taylor Hall. The big picture is Marc Bergevin didn't go after him because he was scared he would fall back into his old habits that put him into rehab. And so then the radio host goes, well, he goes on to talk about a Sebastian Aho, Chris Tanev, and first-round pick that could have been for Subban. That apparently was a tabled deal that Vancouver offered. But
Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny.
How they have gotten?
Well, because they hadn't acquired him yet, which is the weirdest thing. So
Are you sure it was Sebastian Aho?
that's what it says that's what they said. There were Sebastian Aho. So
is your source a hockey agent?
no, the translator says, I think Sebastian Aho would have been a mistake. Okay, he's like, there were Sebastian Aho, Chris Tanev, and a first-round pick, so it probably wasn't Sebastian Aho. So that's weird.
Maybe separate deals.
Anyway, I guess they said no to that, and it was going to be, I guess, those three guys for Taylor Hall, Darnell Nurse, and their first-round pick. Anyway, long story short, they talk about a little bit about the nightlife in Edmonton and Montreal and how they were a little bit concerned. The host talks a little bit about the nightlife in Montreal being a little bit more lively than it is in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, okay, fine, but it's pretty hard to compare Montreal's nightlife to anybody else's nightlife.
Right.
And it is interesting that later on, George Laraque tweeted this out in French and in English that Taylor Hall had not been to rehab and that he had a bad source.
Well, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm on his Twitter right now, and I'm trying to find it, and I can't. It seems like he deleted that and the apology. If I didn't know any better, maybe I missed it. It's still, you can still read it, and I know that because former Leaf draft pick Dale Mitchell, if you remember him, former third-round pick, I want to say 2007, called out George Laraque, and then they sort of got into it. It is one of the worst apologies I've ever seen because if you saw all his responses to the people still calling him out, he was still yelling and screaming at them.
Yeah.
And,
and somebody said,
"Who are you? My dad was one of them."
One of the responses, one of the people
I gotta
said,
find it. Sorry.
One of the tweets rightly said, you could have wrecked a guy's reputation on this. And he said, well, clearly it's not true, so it won't wreck his reputation. Well, beyond all of that, whether or not it is true, whether or not Taylor Hall went to rehab, and I guess he didn't.
Yeah.
The fact that the NHL policy is you don't talk about that on the first time.
Yeah.
The first go around, when you're in rehab, it's silent, it's under the radar, you don't say that.
Right.
The fact that somebody's out there outing people or outing people on a rumor and not even knowing for sure himself is a little bit mystifying.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that a former NHLer would come out and say that. Especially on bad information, but I guess
his tweet has been deleted. I think he deleted the apology, which is
his
strange.
apology has been deleted. Yeah.
That's how you know you had a bad apology.
Is he going to apologize for the apology?
I haven't seen it. Maybe
have you
in
found,
French,
have
and
you
I
found
don't
the dad
know.
tweet yet?
No.
So he's
tweeting
been,
about like football.
He's been defending his apology to people who were replying to the now deleted tweet. And one user wrote, Stephen Davis said, "I can accept that you're sorry, but spreading gossip about someone is never the right thing to do." And then George wrote, "Because like many people that get information, my source confirmed to me it was true and verified."
But all the same, you don't say it.
So
That's a personal matter.
what Dale Mitchell said was, of course, this is 100% false on so many levels. The irony of a former enforcer would publicly disclose any player going to rehab is disgusting. We asked for players and people to seek help if they need it, but George will be the first guy to publicly announce it for his own motives. And then George said, "You don't even know how this happened to say that. Neither did you know where, how, and what was said." George,
Speaking,
the what was said was on the air, man.
Yeah.
And then you apologize for it. And
was
then, he's not sorry, I guess, is the big takeaway from all of this.
It was a conversation in French radio where I was defending the Oilers, and it was badly translated. Listen to that podcast, and you would see that wasn't as bad as this all sounds.
Oh,
well, actually,
stop,
I've got the
George.
direct translation here, and it is as bad as it sounds. I just read it to you.
No, so I think it is interesting hearing the full big quote there, because the second half of it, I could have swore he was going to bat for Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
After outing him
Yeah.
for going to rehab, which apparently didn't happen.
Well, and then he's trying to justify why the Subban Hall trade didn't happen. It's because Marc Bergevin didn't want to take a chance. And again, those are his words, not mine, on Taylor Hall. It's interesting that any of this came up. It's weird. It's a weird conversation to be having, and I'm trying to figure out what the direction was.
I'll tell you exactly what it was. So you said the host had this big roundabout way of getting to the topic, and then George awkwardly goes into it. That's because before that segment or before that show that day, he goes, "You ready for me to serve up a big, juicy George sirloin? I got something for the show today. Guess what?" And the host goes, "All right, I'm ready." And he sets it up, and George attempts to knock it down and hits a gutter ball.
Right.
That's what happened. So, I don't think this was an off-the-cuff conversation the way it was set up.
It certainly doesn't
And I
seem
don't
that
think
way.
it was an accident that the words came out the way they did.
And if there's one thing we know about Quebec City radio specifically is that it's highly sensationalized.
Well, Quebec.
Well,
I
Quebec,
don't know about sensationalized as much
No,
as
no,
they
no.
just don't give a shit.
No,
they don't
dude,
give a
it's-
shit about your feelings.
it's a no,
or
it's
family or anything.
From people that I know in Quebec radio, Quebec City is known for its sensationalized coverage. That's
Oh,
just
okay.
what they're known for.
Fine.
It's different than Montreal. Montreal's a little bit tamer.
Well,
They're
where was
wild
Mario
too.
Tremblay?
What's that?
Where
That was
Mario
Montreal.
Tremblay oh, well, okay.
I'm pretty sure that was Montreal.
I mean,
think.
it's not like Toronto's saintly or
No,
anything, or any
no,
other
but-
Canadian market or any other hockey market, but how do you go on the air and say
Okay.
that?
First off, I think it should be noted it's just completely inappropriate on George's part too.
100%.
That's what you're trying
Even
to-
if it was true, it's not his
can't say it.
story to tell. First and foremost. Second of all, he made the point there about how it was affecting his play, and he was having 50, 60 point seasons in Edmonton, which is patently false. I mean, he had an 80-point season in 70 games at some point there, and he was clearly their best player, just dragging along an empty husk of an organization with him.
So here's an interesting thing. He said the announcer to set this whole interview up said this specifically. Said, "I went on Hockey DB, looked at the stats, and everything happens. I arrived at the New Jersey Devils page. Their best scorer. You have Taylor Hall at 81 points. It's the best season of his career. The second best scorer is
By
Nico,
1 point. Stop.
the second best scorer is Nico Hischier, their first choice in last year's draft. He has 48 points. The first has anyway, blah blah blah. He goes, Taylor Hall carries the team on his shoulders himself, and we're questioning the competence of Peter Chiarelli because it's him who did the Taylor Hall Adam Larson trade 2 years ago. It's become one of the steals in modern history." And that's when George goes,
Right.
Well,
Actually,
little nugget that there's no way you knew I had. So now
Allegedly.
let's for a minute, let's go to a fantasy world where what he said the first time is true. And similarly, and I just saw it in the Twitterverse, a lot of people were going, well, Tyler Seguin had his issues in Boston too. And we saw
Did
that.
he though?
Well, wait, we saw that clip with, well, does he fit in our culture? So all the subtext in the world is there, and you can kind of extrapolate. You are just making it up, but the subtext is there.
Right.
So let's say in our fantasy world, all that stuff about Seguin is bad and it's true, and all that stuff about Hall is bad and it's true. Both players are near 100-point players. They're 90-point players. So in both situations, for the first and second overall picks in 2010, there's a superstar there. In both situations, there's a superstar there. And in both situations, you weren't able to bring it out of them. So it's still an indictment on you, no matter how it's sliced. But now it sounds like it's not even friggin' true.
Well, and even if Taylor Hall had 50 or 60-point seasons,
he'd still be leading the Devils in scoring.
Well, and no, but look at the teams he was playing on in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Like, that's
look at
impressive.
the team he played on in New Jersey last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
He got injured. Look where they were.
Yeah.
Not good.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just
It's
the whole thing is just strikes me as odd, and the setup's weird, the translation's weird, the apology's weird. I am curious to see, I'm curious as to the motivation. That's where it goes back. I still don't get the motivation.
I'm gonna hit it out of the park was the motivation, and he didn't.
I mean, I'd love to think they had a pre-show meeting. They sit down before they start recording, and the radio host's like, "All right, George, we're going to talk about the color of tennis balls, jam and guacamole, and podcast title names." And George is like, "All right, I'm ready." And then he starts, and he's like, "Actually, here's this bombshell out of nowhere."
I have to ask you guys: does Brad Marchand get a pass for being terrible because he's so good?
What do you mean?
You mean
Well,
as a
like,
person?
Look at
as a rat?
I don't mean
As an on-ice player.
No, he might be a great guy. I've heard he is a great guy.
It seems like he is.
Because look at
But gotta hate him on the ice.
Yeah.
if he did, and I want to read Marcus Johansson's comments about him in a little bit because I think they're actually really great. But I want you to keep this in mind. If you look at that hit that he threw, if that was Patrick Coletta,
Yep.
if that was Matt Cook,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
that's a 10-game suspension,
John
no
Scott.
problem.
Yeah.
John Scott. And John Scott's not, I don't think John Scott was dirty.
Yeah.
He was,
He had a couple hits.
okay.
He had a couple hits.
So here's what Johansson said about it. And they said, "What did you think of the hit?" And he said it was stupid. There's nothing else to say about it. There's no point in doing that. There was no hockey play there whatsoever. It's sad to see the guys are still out there trying to hurt other guys. It's sad. It's stupid. I'm hoping it doesn't come to him ending someone else's career before it's enough. It's not why we play the game. There are obvious situations where you try to hit someone to make a hockey play and it goes wrong. Then there are plays like this, which has nothing to do with hockey. It's sad to see. I guess I'm unfortunate to be on the receiving end of that. And then they followed this up, and this is where I'll finish it. He was suspended for 5 games. You think that was enough? He goes, "No, not really, considering it was the 9th time he's been suspended or fined. 9th.
Seriously?
He's not even 30 yet. Like I said, you hope that it doesn't come to him ending someone's career before it's enough. That's all I can say. I'm trying to put that behind me and get back to feeling normal again. That's all I can do." Now, remember, this was his 2nd concussion in 3 months.
And, the Devils were pretty securely in a playoff spot for a big chunk of the season. They're still in one, but they don't control their own destiny. They missed the playoffs by 1 point or maybe even a tie break. You could argue Brad Marchand cost the Devils the playoffs.
See, is he smart or dirty?
No,
Well,
he's dirty. He's
He is dirty. I
100%
mean, like,
dirty.
he could have scored 40 goals last year.
Like, it's not
But with-
clever what he's doing. Like, he got caught.
Yeah.
He brained the guy. with
In
his
game
elbow.
80 last year, he speared somebody in the nuts and got suspended and didn't get his 40th goal. Like,
Who did he spear in the nuts?
I don't remember who it was.
Jake Dotchin.
No,
Did
Jake Dodgen.
Dotchin deserve it?
Well, Jake Dodgen's an ass too. But,
I think Adam just answered your question.
I mean, it is Jake Dodgen. I don't necessarily feel bad for him. But at what point?
I was ripping Marchand for the Dotchin spear, and I saw that a family member of Dotchin's favorited my tweet,
Oh, no.
and I felt like being, "Take your favorite back. don't ever come near me or my son Austin ever again."
Yeah. At what point do we kind of say, "Okay, Brad, maybe not end someone's career"? Because it is.
It's
it
up
seems
to the
it's like.
Bruins to smack him around.
Well, or is it up to the NHL? This is the 9th time.
I think it's up to Zdeno Chara retiring. There's just so many times over the last few years where you've seen Marchand do something, and then there's just this giraffe behind him, this fist-wielding giraffe who will beat the shit out of you. And it happened again this season. There was a great picture of basically Marchand on stilts, and that whole thing about when enforcers are out there, you play like you're a little bit taller. I think there's some hyperbole to that, but when your enforcer is Zdeno freaking Chara, yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And here's what makes Chara different than most enforcers. He's out on the ice with you. He's out on the ice with your superstars.
And can play with you.
He's
Right.
one of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's a Norris Stanley Cup winning player.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see what happens to Brad Marchand's career after Zdeno Chara retires.
I mean,
He might get beat up.
He's such a good player. Like, and I
He's one of the best in
understand
the league.
the distraction, but at what point do we start saying, okay, equal is equal here? He's still doing shitty things.
Like 2 or 3 years ago is when.
Yeah, what Steve said, it's a part of hockey. I think it's just a part of the game where you have enforcers and you have tough guys and they can bully you, and it's a part of the game.
But
and it's
Brad
how it's
Marchand-
been played. And he's gonna take advantage of that as long as he can.
You're right.
So okay, so Patrice O'Neill, a comedian, I know we talk about him every so often. He had this bit called the punk test, and he recalled a time in his childhood where this stranger joined in a game of pickup basketball, and he was doing all this stuff to mess with him throughout the game. And he's stepping on his foot and giving him a hard push, and then basically what that guy was doing was feeling up Patrice to see if he would do anything. He called it the punk test, see if he's a punk. And after the basketball game, he decides, you know what, I'm going to rob you. And so he robs him. I wrote about how the Bruins do that to every team in the league in 2012. No, I did it in 2011. It was the beginning of the 2011-12 season after the Bruins had won the cup, and they had a crazy winning
The
streak.
Canucks in the final.
Yep.
Yeah, wow,
And because they did whatever they wanted to their opponent, and nobody did anything. Because why would they? It's the Bruins. They got friggin' Chara. They got McQuaid. They had Thornton at the time.
Lucic.
Oh my God! I forgot about the biggest one. I forgot about the biggest one. And it's all these years later. Most of those players are gone.
Yeah.
And it's still happening.
Lucic, who was never going to go back to Vancouver because of how he was treated by his hometown fans.
Supposedly. But I bet betting could convince him. That could be what turns the whole franchise around.
I think they're wanting Milan Lucic and his whatever contract
$7
until the
million?
end of time.
Oh,
away
5
from-
years left or whatever.
Imagine you have $10 million for the next 3 years wrapped up in Goodbranson and Lucic.
Not hard to imagine.
Everybody's playing harder or tougher, right?
That's some big
Tell
boy
him.
hockey right there.
That is definitely some big boy hockey. It's incredible to me that, what is this, 6-7 years later?
Yeah.
I could easily
still doing
write
it.
the same thing.
And listen, if he were a Leaf, I would be like his biggest fan. I mean, I couldn't get behind somebody spearing someone in the nuts. I can't justify that.
No.
There was some stuff that Tucker and Domi did when they were, when
come
Domi
on,
ran
yeah.
Niedermeyer and Tucker did. Tucker had a bad hit on somebody once, and at that point you're like, okay, I'm a human being. Like that's stupid. But Brad Marchand, playoff Marchand, is the best.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's fun to watch.
Well, there's a difference between the 2013 series against the Leafs. There's a difference between he was really good at just ever so daintily touching your skate blade with his stick and knocking you off balance. There's a difference between like sly rat stuff and giving someone a John Jones elbow in the friggin' temple, which is what he did to Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
He just came down on him like that.
But then when it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, who do you want centering your line?
Yeah.
Brad Marchand.
And again, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Chara. Someone like JVR is down on the ice. So is the other player. And they literally elbow dropped him. Like Macho Man Randy Savage elbow dropped him. And it wasn't a call because it's Game 7. And you got to basically murder someone in Game 7. So, but I guess my objection, Jesse, is that wasn't Game 7 that happened in. It was just a random regular season game, like 55 games in.
You got to play every game like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup
Yeah,
Final.
maybe that's why he's so good.
Exactly. Don't tell him to only bring it out when the playoffs start.
What was
Let
it,
him
Paul,
be
where he
out.
said last year when the Jets didn't make the playoffs? Every year I aim to win the Stanley Cup. Every year.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, man, but you missed the playoffs this year. Like, come on, they're doing great this year.
You bring up a good point, though. He's got to play every game like that. Like, I've scolded Nazem Kadri for seeing the red mist one too many times, but I mean, maybe that's part of what makes him great.
Yeah, you need it to kind of fire yourself up.
Yeah.
Back-to-back 30-goal seasons, right? So.
Okay. Just thought I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Sorry. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
no. Well, what was your final topic? Because I wanted to go back to something from
Go back.
before, but I just forgot.
Go back.
Okay, so I forgot to ask about Vegas.
Yep.
Where did you have them going into the season? Because I don't think anyone had them anywhere like even near halfway through the league. And why have they been so good?
Oh,
in
I
your
had
opinion?
them exactly where they are right now.
Yeah?
Yeah, just don't go back and read any of the articles or the tweets. Just take my word for it. No, listen, I, like everyone else, thought that they were really going to struggle this year. I wasn't even a huge fan of the way they handled the draft, to be honest. I thought they could have squeezed out much more value than they did. And
them.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, George McPhee was
stupid
pretty soft on his counterpart GMs. I feel like he really could have gotten more out of them, and everything's coming to place. I mean, William Carlson scored his 40th goal last night. I mean, obviously getting gift wrapped to top line guys from Florida helps, but they got a couple good guys from Minnesota as well, and yeah, it's great. It's going to be unfortunate for Seattle because they're going to get compared to this season that they're having.
How great would Florida be with one of Riley Smith or Jonathan Marchand
In the playoffs.
Yeah.
and they could have kept either.
Yeah.
Like they would have lost one.
Yeah.
Give them
Coulda
the
kept
Leafs
that.
run for their money. Leafs might be maybe in the wild card picture again. I don't want to be thinking about that. The other one that's been coming up recently is how bad do you think William Karlsson's contract is going to be?
Is he ever going to do this again?
Oh, definitely not. No,
He's shooting. What is it? 25%.
Yeah, around there. Yeah, 23
Never
something.
again.
No. Yeah, he's never done this at any level before.
If he shoots 15% next year, which is still high,
Yeah.
it's going to be a huge drop off.
Right. Like, I think he can still be productive if in the same role next season. If he plays with Marchand and Riley Smith on that top line and top power play, he'll score 20, 25, even up to 30 goals. But
Which is still
you don't-
great.
No, it's great, but you don't want to pay him for the season he had right now, thinking that's what you're getting. Especially when I just said it's very reliant on the role. Like, I don't think he's all of a sudden going to be on his own line next season and be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, it's very reliant on who he's playing with, and you don't want to pay guys for that, especially when you can replace them with other guys for cheaper prices.
I mean, your show is called the PDO Cast.
Yeah.
What is Vegas's PDO? Are they a lucky team or are they a good team?
They've been slightly fortunate, but it's honestly not even that high. I mean, early in the season it was quite high. Now it's normalized quite a bit, and yeah, they seem like they're for real. Like next year, if they come back with the same team, I'm not gonna project them being this successful. I think they're kind of catching teams off guard a little bit, and that's why I'm skeptical in the postseason when teams have a chance to sort of sit down and game plan for them on a game-to-game basis and slow it down a little bit. They might struggle a bit more, but it's a great story. And yeah, I guess just enjoy the ride. We always try to sort of
Jump too far ahead.
dissect this stuff,
Yeah,
or
you're
what does
right.
this mean for next season and the year beyond? And I understand why we do it, but sometimes you can just like take something for what it is, and that's what's happening here.
My favorite Vegas news of recent that's come out is when they had the GM meetings and they said that Vegas won't be a part of the Seattle expansion
Right.
draft. They're not going to make them lose a player when
What?
Seattle comes in.
No
yeah, it was
way.
Stop.
I had to take a second to pull it up because
No
I had to make
way.
sure it was actually a
Yeah.
thing I read. But it was
No.
in Chris Johnson's report
Yep.
from the GM meetings. Yeah, I assume you read this too.
That's right. Yep.
Well,
Uh,
they did just write
so-
a check for $500 million.
Because
So
they're-
did Seattle.
because when Seattle paid for their expansion fee, Vegas isn't going to get a cut of that money. The GMs are like, all right, so you don't have to lose a player.
Yeah.
So that's how it's settling right now. Who knows if it's going to change come 2020 when they have the draft?
I suppose.
But right now, Vegas is all in the
That
clear.
is amazing.
Yeah.
I guess why don't
Wow.
they get the money?
Yeah, that's weird too. I
They're
don't
there.
understand.
They're only paying it to the 30 teams, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe the 30 owners were like, nah, you haven't been here long enough. You're not getting money already. We work for this. I can understand that. You're an owner, and you've been an owner for 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years, 20 years, and this one team comes in, and all of a sudden the league's making more money than it ever has before, and they're going to share in that? I don't think so.
It was a part of the deal, it says here, that Bill Foley struck when he got his franchise, that he wouldn't be able to get any of the money
So this
from the
is-
next franchise.
Pre them being amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the deal,
I bet
it
they
said,
feel
yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that'll be fun.
What team, and this is a question for everybody in the room, okay? Western or Eastern Conference. What team is going to react stupidly to missing the playoffs? Going to make a stupid move this summer because they missed the playoffs and they overreact to that sometimes. Sometimes you just leave your team alone and you're better. Like I look at Edmonton, I look at Calgary, and I think just leave it. Like maybe Calgary improves their goaltending a little bit or gets a backup for Mike Smith.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, are they a better team than they've shown? Sure, absolutely, right? Travis Hamonic plays like Travis Hamonic again. Chicago's missing the playoffs for the first time in the century, I think. Like it's just crazy.
They already had their stupid offseason. They're done now. I
Yeah.
think they got it out of their system.
With the Brandon Saad, Artemi Panarin trade.
Oh, wow.
so bad.
They let 4 games from Pecorino just ruined them. I'm going to say the Islanders because Garth Snow has been, it's very quiet, too quiet. And I want to see the kablooey, especially if Tavares doesn't resign. What's the kablooey going to be? Then again, maybe he does resign and they get the 1st and 2nd overall pick. But I'll say the Islanders.
Okay.
Because that's my answer to everything, apparently.
That's all right.
I'd say the Oilers seem like a logical pick to
Just based on the general manager
and trade Nugent Hopkins or something. Yeah.
Oh my!
I mean,
God.
would you count the Senators trading Carlson as overreacting, or do you think it's a fair reaction to the year they've had?
Depends on what they get.
Yeah.
I think it's just their situation. Is it even a reaction if they're trading him? I feel like that's like them just acting and going, we can't do this. Right? We can't re-sign this guy.
But obviously, if the season had unfolded differently, they wouldn't be acting like
Good
that.
point.
Right?
Yeah, so I wouldn't count them in that.
Right.
But if they, let's say they sold low on Duchesne.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, okay, that's an overreaction.
Right. Yeah, I'll go with the Oilers then. It's always a good bet to bet against, or I guess bet on Chiarelli to make you look good.
God,
I was thinking,
I don't want to be cruel.
I was thinking, at what point do the Buffalo Sabres just get fed up and just start just moving everybody? Maybe it's this offseason.
I would hope they
Robin
do.
Leonard.
Yeah.
I bet they move. I think they're sick of him.
They could get a king's ransom for a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, who wins 60% of his faceoffs, but he makes $7.5 million. Like,
The one,
a lot of money.
The one thing I'll buy into
He does make a lot
is
of money.
at some point you need to hold on to people. Like, is Buffalo's problem like a lack of, they just haven't picked anybody recently?
well, don't they have cap issues?
How?
Well,
do they?
with the Okposo deal.
Yeah,
Oh
Okposo
my
signed through 2023 at $6 million, and he's 29. Palmenville's 5.6 through 2019, and he's 35. Ristolainen, 5.4 through 2022. Bogosian, 27, 5.1 through 2020. Scandella, $4 million, and he's 28 through 2020. That's a lot of money.
Like, the biggest contract they have coming off the books is Josh George's. And then on forward, they've got Jacob Josephson, Jordan Nolan, and Benoit Pouliot. And none of those guys are making much more than $1 million.
What do you think of Middlestat?
Oh, I think he's gonna be awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So there's a potential piece.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. I look at their top 2 contracts, and I think you should probably move those guys. Because by the time your team is built up and ready to go, those guys are past their prime. Ryan O'Reilly is 27. He is going into his winner's prime. If you're Montreal and you have 4 second-round draft picks, I would be leveraging all 4 of them. And maybe a
But
first.
$7.5 million is
They got the cap room.
At some point, though, like I just feel like you need to have a decent hockey team. Don't you? Come on, like
They didn't rebuild properly, though.
Yeah.
So
Like, look at
so
them.
here's they're in the worst position possible where they tried to rebuild and failed. So do you double down and do it again? Again?
Dimitri.
Yeah.
What
It's
do
a
you
different
do?
guy.
Armchair GM this. What do you do?
Fix the Buffalo Sabres. Go.
Let's have a look at
his
the
computer.
spreadsheet here.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think you're on the right track there with trading Ryan O'Reilly, assuming you can get an interesting package back. I wouldn't trade him just for the sake of trading him because I still think he's a valuable player for them. But I mean, we sort of see what they are like with Ryan O'Reilly. They're making $7.5 million, so can it get much worse than this right now? Like they're the worst team in the league this season. Yeah, they got to do something. I mean, Middlestat's going to be very exciting. I think it'll help having another dynamic forward, so it's not all on Jack Eichel's plate. They're going to have a high pick this year as well. Obviously, if they get Rasmus Dahlin, I think the outlook changes quite a bit because they do need that stud defenseman. I don't think Ristolainen, regardless of the contract they gave him, is that guy. So it's not pretty, man. Like I actually like their summer they had this year where I thought they brought in a bunch of NHL players, which they didn't have the past few years. So I was like, they're going to be competent, and now they're the 31st team in the league. So
Right.
it's like, there's just something in the water there, I guess. I don't know.
Boy.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, Jack Eichel.
It did seem a
got
bit
injured.
weird. You know,
It's true.
when they were drafting Jack Eichel and then giving Matt Molson huge money, or they were bottoming out and giving Matt Molson and Brian
Yeah.
Giunta huge money.
Right.
So I haven't checked on his numbers in a while, but like last I checked, he was doing really well in the minors, and I wondered if they give him a shot. But the Sabres. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt Molson.
Oh, yeah, he was. I mean, I think he was like profiled on Coach's Corner a couple weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, can they even afford to call him up? I don't know.
38 points in 41 games.
Not
That's
bad.
all right, man.
I mean,
It's an
he's
NHL player.
clearly overqualified for the AHL level, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but he played 14 games for Buffalo Sabres, and he had a record of 0-0-0-0.
Ooh, nice.
It's like Sam Mitchell.
as Sam Mitchell
0-0-0.
So he didn't take any penalties.
Same as us.
Actually, he got 2 penalty minutes.
Oh, man.
Bye-bye, Lady Bing.
So I'm going to say my team that overreacts to missing the playoffs this year is Calgary. Because not
You
only
might
they
be
miss the
right.
playoffs, they get Travis Hamonic and they don't have that pick.
pick, right.
And if the Islanders get that pick, if that pick, doesn't matter what the Islanders get with their pick, the Calgary pick's going to be interesting because as soon as that Calgary pick enters the top 5,
Yep.
people are going to go, "Grr!" And what's interesting about Calgary is
It's gonna
apparently
be a fun lottery to watch.
they've got some young defensemen like Shillington,
Yep.
who's coming up and is pretty good.
Yep. Rasmus Anderson.
Yeah. So it's not like they don't have some young guys coming in.
Yep.
And if you look at a guy to me, and I get this from Elliot Friedman in 31 Thoughts, the Rangers have said we're totally willing to trade one of our first round picks. So if you're Calgary, do you not go, what about TJ Brody?
Hey, that's interesting.
Right?
But now you're cutting into your team, though. So I remember he was like the golden boy for a
TJ
long
Brody?
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
especially when
just-
he came up, he was underpaid, but he was playing with Mark Giordano quite a bit, and I think Giordano's the type of defenseman that makes everyone he plays with look better. He's had a rough go of it. I don't know if he's been healthy or not, but yeah, it clearly hasn't worked with him and Hamonic, and he seems like he'd be. I mean, sort of that profiles as that kind of puck moving, slick skating defenseman. So teams would be all over that. I don't know why the Rangers. I saw that report as well, but
Why?
why would they do that? Especially after that letter they write
Well-
about how they're turning over the car keys to the future and.
If I was, because Eric Francis was talking about TJ Brody specifically, and I guess he's got a bit of the Jake Gardner syndrome where he does amazing things and he does things that you go, what the fuck, what's going on?
Right.
And if I'm the Rangers, I want Shillington. That's the guy I want, for a first round pick. And I'm not saying TJ Brody for
at
a
least.
first one for
Right,
one.
right.
That's not what I'm proposing here. But if you are the New York Rangers and you are rebuilding, you could turn TJ Brody into something else too.
Yeah, for sure.
You could flip him because that's a defenseman in need or in a defenseman you'd like. Give Calgary whatever first round pick they want, not yours. They have Tampa's, right? It's Tampa's?
The Rangers,
Wait,
yeah.
sorry.
The Rangers
Oh,
have Tampa's in their own.
I think so.
I think the Rangers have Tampa's this year, and then they have Tampa's second rounder next year, but it becomes
Conditional.
a first if they win the cup or something like this.
Or make the final
Yeah,
or whatever. No,
So-
in each.
That's not bad. Good
I,
deal for
I
them.
pulled it up here. The Rangers have 3 first-round picks.
Wow.
Theirs, Boston's, and Tampa's.
Oh, right, because of Rick Nash.
I
What a-
forgot
what a
Boston
deadline.
had him.
God, they won the
It was
deadline.
actually no, yeah. I still think the Rangers won the deadline. Yeah,
And
which is why it's a little bit weird that they're going to give one up.
next year's first-round pick, they got a second-round pick from Tampa for 2019, and that can become a first if Tampa wins the cup in this year or next year.
And what a deal that will be if they win the cup.
That's a pretty good deal right now.
Yeah. I think Tampa's going to be okay with that if they have
Oh,
a cup,
yeah.
the cup to show for it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was like the Pronger pick.
Yeah.
Where I think the Ducks ended up giving the Oilers Jordan Eberle.
Yeah.
It was the conditional pick if you make the final, but it's like who cares?
cares?
We have a
won.
cup.
Yeah, you made it.
Well, and what's interesting too is that the Tampa pick, if they won the cup, would be a first or a second round pick yet last year. The 31st, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay, but in terms of I feel like Calgary and New York are like the perfect match for each other right
Yeah.
now. And New York could get a lot better quicker than we think.
It's interesting.
They
'cause,
just
like,
need to get faster, like you said, right?
But see, this is the thing. It kind of ties it back full circle to we started talking about Jim Benning and the Canucks and the rebuild. And I think what the Rangers are doing right now is what teams that aren't good should pursue doing. Like last year, they sort of saw the writing on the wall. They cashed in. They traded Derek Stepan for 7th overall and Anthony DeAngelo. They get Elias Anderson with that pick, who looks like he's going to be a really promising young player. He's going to have a little cameo here at the end of the season for them. So they had 2 first-rounders last year. Now they have 3 coming up. They could have another 2 and possibly more if they make trades next year in the years to come. That's how you need to accrue just mass talent like that because the draft is a crapshoot, so you're just basically getting lottery tickets.
I think trade talk is so much more fun now than it was maybe 2 years ago because so many more teams are like, you only live once. And they're
Yeah.
just doing these crazy deals, right?
Yeah.
Let's really commit to a rebuild. So you got that class of teams like the Leafs, the Rangers pulling out that crazy Stepan deal. The Bergevin just once a year dropping just a nuke on the entire league. I think it's just more fun. Like there's more possibilities out there.
Well, and if you look at the Rangers, you know, with the exception of like David Desharnais, who's leaving, or you would assume is because he's UFA, you've got Nemesnikov, who you got to re-sign, Kevin Hayes and Ryan Spooner. Those are going to be tough deals, especially, well, they're not going to be crazy. But you've got Matt Zuccarello, who's 30, and he makes $4.5, and he's got 1 year left on that deal. So that's one of those deals that they talk about, like, that's the high value mark, right? If you can trade a guy like that, and he's got a year left with a team that wants to load up, maybe you call Tampa again next year. But other than that, Zibanejad, 24, Kreider, 26, Spooner, 26, Hayes, 25, Nemesnikov, 25, Jesper Fast, 26. This is not an old team. With the exception of Shattenkirk and Mark Stahl, those are the only guys even close to 30, but they're not very deep on defense. They need help. I mean, they could turn it around next year, easily.
And the elephant in the room is they still have Henrik Lundqvist, who's still really good, and you sort of want to take advantage of that while you still have him. So you don't want to like completely rebuild it because he's kind of too good at this point still for you to bottom out because he's just going to steal you too many games.
Totally.
But you can't tell him to just stop playing well.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's why they're open to it. Maybe they know that.
Yeah.
And maybe they need it. Well, they've got NHL caliber goalie Andrei Pavlik as well back there. Let's not forget.
I'm cheering for Georgiev. Alexander Georgiev. Noted Steve Dangle fan. Alexander Georgiev.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, didn't I talk about that on the podcast?
I have no idea what you're referencing.
Okay, so myself and Andrei Osachenko. I thought I did.
No, I've never heard of it.
I could have swore I did. Anyway, myself and Andrei Osachenko, we used to have this show talking about just the NHL and KHL called Joining the Rush. And there's a Russian social media site. It's basically the Russian Facebook called vk.com. And this kid, I think he was like 15 years old, started a fan page for Joining the Rush. That kid plays for the Rangers now. It's Alexander Georgiev, according to Andre.
Wow.
I haven't confirmed this. I would love to meet the guy and be like, is this you? Imagine if he's just like, no.
I have no idea what
I
you're
don't know
talking
who
about.
you are. Get the hell out of here.
That's cool.
But yeah, I think that's super cool.
Guy
So,
likes you. That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm a fan of his forever.
Did he do that and then also watch your LFRs? Do you know?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I assume so because they're great.
You should ask him.
I know. I only recently found out this information. I'm kind of doing a thing right now, Jesse. What might I be doing?
Throwing it
Don't
out
do
there?
this to me. Don't do this to me.
I don't know what you do. You have do you do anything ever?
Where's the camera? I'm writing a book. Just had to say that one more time.
Dimitri, if you're the Rangers and you got 3 first-round picks, what's the smarter move? Trade pick for player, like a TJ Brody package. Again, I don't want any Flames fans coming at me going, that's not worth it. Or do you trade down, like what the Leafs did to get was it Travis Dermott and I forget who else they got with that pick. They got like 3 or 4 players. Yeah, they did a couple trade downs. Is it smarter to do that and get a bunch of seconds? Because you probably can get 2 seconds for every first that you have. So maybe you call Montreal and go, hey, do you want a first in the draft? Or do you just hang on to them, draft, and go? Because you got 3 first-round picks, you might as well take them.
I mean, it's not the most satisfying answer, but it's too early to tell because I haven't really done a lot of draft prep, but also it kind of depends on how the draft's going. Like you sort of reach these tiers in every draft where it's like there's a big drop-off, and then it's like, well, we can probably get a similar player 20 picks later, so let's get another extra pick if we can here and move down if you're not in love with anyone. And I think that's what the Leafs did, even though I didn't love when they did it at the time because I feel like they passed up on Travis Konechny to do so.
They did, and Alex
Dermott looks
DeBrincat.
awesome, obviously.
It
But
was Travis Konechny, and then I think with it, the Leafs got, I want to say, Dermott, Bracco, Jerkels, and I want to say in a roundabout way, they got
awesome value for sure.
Yeah. So, and like, I mean, what could the Leafs use right now? Travis Konechny or Travis Dermott? Like, I mean,
someone named Travis.
Yeah, I know someone named Travis. As I was saying that, I was like, whoa, wait a sec. And I mean, Konechny's an amazing player, but you know, maybe he's putting up the numbers he is because the Flyers afford him the opportunity to.
Right.
And Dermott is in the lineup because the Leafs defense kind of sucks. So I don't know. Maybe
He also
maybe it ended up being
scratched
perfect.
and clawed his way in too, right? It was like they're doing everything they can not to bring him up, and he just played his way in.
I think it was, hey, you want me or Borgman? Let's go.
Right. Okay.
Let's go. I don't think he was supposed to make the Leafs this year.
Who?
And Dermott. Like, they sort of talked about it like it was always the plan. I don't think it was. Not from what I've heard. From what I've heard, the plan was at least next year, and they wanted to, get him playing a lot of power play, get him playing a lot of penalty kill. And he's, like, dipped his toe in the penalty killing pool here in the NHL. But he's going to be a real key piece.
If you're the Leafs GM,
Trade Travis Dermott.
you're Lou Dubas. That's your new name, Lou Dubas.
Okay.
Lou Hunter.
Do you re-sign any of JVR, Bozak, or Komarov, or make that a priority?
No on all three, I think. Obviously, it depends on the price. I think JVR's term is going to be a bit too rich for my blood, especially with his scoring binge he's been on. He's sort of priced himself out of staying in Toronto, I feel like, he's an awesome player, very productive. I think he could probably play in a more expanded role, although I'm always intrigued by this idea of these guys who don't play much of 5-on-5, but just absolutely kill it on the power play. Yeah. And there's a lot of value in that. But yeah, if he's going to get 4 or 5 years from someone, and someone will be willing to pay him that,
maybe 6 or 7.
I think it's one of those things where you just got to think ahead, and you're going to have to pay all these guys down the road, and you just acknowledge it might be a bit of a hit in the short term, but it's the type of critical decision making you have to make.
Okay. Let's do the press conference, shall we?
The presser.
Everybody questions now. All the Twitter questions. All the
The
questions.
Steve Dangle press conference.
For the music that we can't hear.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks.
I checked up on the Oilers to see if they were still on a historically terrible pace. The record for the single season home futility on the penalty kill is the 1977-1978 Washington Capitals, who had a 66.7% home penalty kill.
Ooh. Holy crap.
On January 24th, the Oilers had a penalty kill at home of 54.2%.
It's just so impossibly bad.
Today, they have a home penalty kill of 63%.
Whoa.
So, there's still 3 percentage points in the lowest ever in the history of the NHL.
How many games they got left? Like, I don't even know. Like, will they take enough penalties to negate it?
They've played 38 home games. So they got
3 more?
3. Oh, my God.
30 home.
Oh,
3
my
more. They can set
God.
the record.
Oh, that's going to be close. That's going to be very close. Wow. I mean, the season's a failure no matter what because they didn't make the playoffs.
May as well set a record.
Well, I wonder if they look at it like a victory. Like, no, let's at least seal it without breaking the record. But they would, I think, basically have to take. They would have to take enough
a bunch of penalties,
and B, kill them all.
Yeah. 2 things I don't think they can do.
Counterpoint, since it is a lost season, and I think that's sort of one of those. I mean, it's obviously a horrible stat, but I don't think it's necessarily something where I think next year they're going to be historically bad as well.
No.
At home on the penalty kill, that's something very random. Maybe you point to that, be like, "Hey, we're going to be better next year. There's no way we're going to be historically bad again."
Yeah, I like.
We hope.
Yeah, this year, it's different than maybe, 2013 when we're arguing about, listen, you understand this is never going to happen again, right? Or you understand this is a one-off, right? I think everyone sort of understands, like, guys, William Carlson is probably not going to score 40 again. Guys, the Oilers' penalty kill is not going to be 63% at home again. Like, you know that, right? Everyone seems to be a little bit more open to that.
True.
Yeah. Anything else, Adam?
No. Well, it's not really me. It's Jesse that's supposed to be asking the question, but he's fixing a camera right now. So.
Wait, were we recording that whole conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We got. Did you not? You didn't think we were?
I had no idea what was going on. I thought we were just chatting.
Well, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
It's
there
supposed
we
to be
go.
like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. So, Jesse, next question.
That is not a sturdy camera. You're a
This is
risk
one of
taker.
our most upvoted questions ever. It got 19 upvotes. We
Whoa.
rarely reached that peak. Izzy_Brinker wants to know, if you were in the NHL and had to create your own 8-team no-trade list, who would be on it?
Oh, I think we've had a similar question
Let's
before.
go this way. Adam, Steve,
18 no trade
Dimitri.
list.
A lot of players have, like, it changes every year, right? And a lot of players have kind of, like, I think the Leafs were previously on a lot of players' no trade lists, and they're slowly coming off because why the hell wouldn't you want to be on the
See,
Leafs?
none
right
of
now?
this is answering the question.
Well, so what I was getting to is it would be based on whoever sucks the most. So, well, okay, I don't want to go to Arizona. I don't want to go to Edmonton. I don't want to go to Vancouver. Although I get to live in Vancouver.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Brooksy.
See, I'm way too like vain and superficial for this. I would definitely pick the best places to live, and then I don't care. I don't want to win. I just want to. I just want to live a comfortable life. But I will say, like, for example, I would hate to live in Winnipeg. No offense to people who live in Winnipeg, but we saw this year Paul Stastny waived his no trade clause, which seemed unthinkable in years past.
Yep.
So I think, and they're such a fun team with all these young, exciting players. So I think we're going to see in years to come, they might even start signing free agents. Like, people are going to want to play with that type of talent. With that said, I would not want to live in Winnipeg. I think Arizona's great.
I have never been. Adam liked it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's good.
Yoga
Phoenix
with
is
hippies.
great. Sedona's different than Phoenix and Scottsdale and every other place that the Coyotes play. But I mean, God, Scottsdale's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, North Scottsdale in one of those villas.
Yeah, you
got your
golf
own
every
pool.
day.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Sounds
I'm
good.
there. And a lot of time to golf when you're not playing in the playoffs.
I'll tell you this. I would have a hard time with Montreal. And the reason I say that is because of the taxes. If you go to Montreal, you are losing half of your salary instantaneously and taxes gone.
That should be like on our Steve Dangle podcast, like bingo board. Adam talking about Quebec taxes.
I wouldn't want to go to that. I want to be in places where I could keep the majority of the money that I make.
True.
So
Such
I want to be
such
in
a fun city to live in, though.
Oh, it is. It's and that's like you got
For
to
all
give
the
me
wrong reasons, though.
Yeah.
For like
I
a
know.
professional
Listen,
athlete.
if
right?
it
Like,
was me and I could play in the NHL, I wouldn't give a shit where. Just let me play in the NHL. It'd be so sick. I would
Okay,
love it.
Buffalo for sure. We're crossing that. Buffalo.
yeah.
Detroit?
Well,
I don't want to live in Detroit.
But I'm so close to home.
Detroit's
With
cool
Buffalo.
though now.
Really?
Detroit's not what it was, man. It's like it's coming back in a really funky, cool way.
Really?
They're like leading edge on micro farming and like a whole. But there's really cool stuff going on in Detroit. Plus, you can buy like an entire apartment building and make it your own for like $500,000.
Yeah, you know,
It's insane.
it's great that it's coming back. I'll take it off my list once it's come
Once
back.
it come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'll be
yeah.
a late adopter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe Detroit. I mean, they're not going to
Columbus?
be able to give me a very good deal because they can't afford me. Because
It's true.
Because you're just too expensive.
Columbus,
You know what I wouldn't want to do? San Jose.
why?
San Jose, everything closes at like 8 o'clock at night. There's no nightlife in San Jose.
Are you like
super specific answers, man? Like,
Well, you're asking me.
Yeah,
I know.
that's the question.
I mean,
Listen, I've
I don't know,
already
I guess-
said I would play anywhere.
You're
I'm not
ripping the
frustrated
guy
with
for
your
answering the
answer. I'm
question.
frustrated with my lack of knowledge.
Okay.
Like, well, how do I answer that back? Oh, good point. Like, I got nothing for that.
Okay, St. Louis.
I don't even
Are
like.
you
What,
living in St. Louis?
I don't
See
know
yourself?
much about
Nelly?
St. Louis
No?
in the actual the city of St. Louis.
no, nothing about it.
That art.
So that's why, like, again, I'm boring. I would just go with the teams that stink.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it'd be one of those lists that changes every year.
Here's the list.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Here's the list right now. The bottom 8 teams: Buffalo, Arizona, Vancouver, Ottawa, Detroit, Montreal, Chicago, New York Rangers, and New York Islanders. So you would still be cool with going to Edmonton or Carolina, or St. Louis.
Like for example, I know of a player who previously had Toronto on their. I would never go there. I don't know if it was necessarily a no trade list, but they were just like, no, I'll never go to Toronto. I would love to sign with Detroit though. And because of what's happened in the last 2 years, it's completely switched. Oh, I won't go to the Red Wings. Oh, I would love to play for the Leafs.
Right.
So yeah,
Not that any player could play for the Red Wings if they really wanted to, because they can't.
I mean,
they have
who
no
likes-
money.
They literally
Yeah.
cannot afford it.
But
Yeah.
who likes losing? Like,
Nobody,
I don't.
yeah.
I don't want to play for a team that I am fairly certain is going to lose.
That's what's so interesting about the no trade list, though, is you have to submit it, I think, before the season, right?
Yep.
So you base that on what
No
you-
Vegas.
Yeah.
Never under any circumstances.
I don't think too many players had that on
But
their
when-
list.
Yeah, actually, good point.
But when
Good
you
point.
waive that no trade clause, you've waived it, from what I understand, for the entirety of the deal.
I think if you accept the trade, right?
If you accept a
If you
trade,
accept the trade somewhere, so let's say you had a no trade clause and then you waive it to go somewhere, I think then that team is able to trade you wherever, right?
yeah.
Well, answer this: did
Yeah.
Phaneuf have to waive to get traded to LA?
Oh, but he did have to waive.
Because he had to waive it to
didn't-
get traded
Oh,
from
okay,
here.
so I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
You maybe you could renegotiate. I'm sure you could probably renegotiate it. I don't know. There might not be necessarily one tried and true rule.
Not sure.
Anyway,
Wow.
interesting.
Final question.
Tough to call out 8 cities and be like, no, F you, I don't want to play there. Like, man, it's the NHL.
I mean, there's a reason people live everywhere. I mean, there are no genuinely small towns in the NHL. You could find a great reason to live anywhere. I don't want to play in a city
With a
that
diplomatic
loses.
answer.
Yeah.
Except Edmonton.
Except Edmonton. Edmonton's fun.
Oh, man, their nightlife, I've heard it's amazing.
White Avenue, man.
Yeah.
You will never forget it. It's the
Edmonton's
best.
fun. The New Dubai, as I was told it's called.
You have
They
to
kept calling it Ed Money, the New Dubai, which I think might be a slight
them.
exaggeration. But no, I don't want to go there because they lose all the time. You know, if it's like last year.
But wouldn't you want to play with
heading into
McDavid?
this season-
Wouldn't you
Oh,
want to play
yeah.
with McDavid?
Oh, yeah, I would. Oh, he'd make
You think
me
you're
rich.
good enough to play with McDavid?
Probably, yeah. I mean, Ty Ratty said his dad could play with him
Are
today.
you left or right?
I shoot right-handed, so I suppose I'd be on the right wing.
All right. So
I mean, I'd
wouldn't you-
probably be a right-handed defenseman. So, like,
Ah.
I mean, I'm primo. I'm
But
premium.
knowing
man.
how Steve plays, there's gonna be no
gave
defense in
him
that
a
game.
puck rushing.
Yeah.
puck rushing defenseman. That doesn't go with their style? What are you saying? Oh, I would just get McDavid
Next
the
question.
puck.
Next question.
Mune Splash wants to know,
Sweet name.
what is the weirdest thing you've seen in someone else's home?
Without calling them out.
No, first and last name.
Well, it's funny. If it's a
And
weird thing
address.
you've seen in their home and they hear this, they're going to know it's them anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. No, I went into someone's bathroom.
It's not unique.
I
What
went
is
into
unique?
someone's bathroom, and I'm facing ahead of me, and I'm looking down into their bathtub, and there, sitting there in several inches of water, was just a watermelon. And I didn't ask about it, and I never got an explanation, and it was just sitting there in their bathtub in several inches of water, a watermelon. I would love to have an
That
answer
seems
for
like
that.
something you ask about. I can't believe you
You
didn't ask
didn't
that
ask?
question.
No. That was
Why?
just- I don't know why.
It wasn't out in the
It's
open.
it's a regret of mine. I should have asked,
Yeah.
but I didn't ask.
Can you ask them today?
Sure.
I'd like to know.
I want to know too.
I'm always fascinated by what people collect.
Hmm.
You know, people always have. There's people with collections. So, like, my grandparents had this teaspoon collection, and it would literally, it was like the whole wall. It was like the whole thing. They just had, and that was like an old British thing too, which is just if there's space on the wall, cover it up. Can't be space on the wall.
Yeah.
And-
Who does that?
Steve. The weirdest thing though I've ever seen is beyond collections and stuff like that is like someone's pet. I walked in and someone had a python
Oh God.
in under a heat lamp, and I was like, "This is."
Were you in Florida?
No, I was not in Florida, and
That
it was
is a pre-warning kind of pet.
yeah, like it's just one of those things where you're like, "Wow, like you live with a killer. That's crazy."
Yeah, I don't get that. I have.
I feel the same way about cats.
Me too. Well, they're killers too, right? They don't like.
I don't
you.
trust them.
You
don't
shouldn't.
trust them?
I don't trust them.
You should never trust a
It's
cat.
so creepy.
It's just. You never hear like a dog owner go, "Oh yeah, they attack me from time to time, but it's fine." Like all cat owners are like, "Oh yeah, they scratch the shit out of me, they bite me. It's
They
fine." No,
actually
but,
hate me.
yeah, but look, I'm petting them right now. Yeah, you're petting them at the moment, but how do you trust them to
Yeah.
not like just mess your like? You always
See-
see them like scratches on their hand and their arm and their neck
Yeah.
and stuff like I don't get it.
Otherwise, lovely experience.
If you
Oh, yeah.
if you pet a dog, it will never get tired of you petting it. If you
If
pet
a dog
cat,
attacks you, they make you give it away.
yeah. Well,
Cats just do it.
but cats, you'll pet a cat for like 2 or 3, and then they'll be like, okay, that's enough. Okay, now I'm gonna attack you. Like it's don't effing touch me at all. I don't know why I censored myself there. Don't fucking touch me, man. And then they'll come up to you and be like, scratch my ears. Okay, that's enough. Thank you. Fuck off. And I find that, cats I don't understand.
And they let cats just out of the house to roam the neighborhood.
So weird.
And
then
that's
they
totally
just
okay.
come back. That's not good.
And they poo in your house.
They poo everywhere.
They poo inside. That's always the thing. You ever walk by cat litter when they've fresh cat poo? Like, I walk by someone's house, I'm like, why does it smell like poo in here? Oh, they have a cat.
There's a very good friend of ours who listens to this podcast who is very much a cat person, and I'm sure I'm going to get the full diatribe. Listen, I'm not saying not to own a cat.
You should probably not own a cat.
I'll never own a cat.
No,
What we're saying is
anybody.
don't spay and neuter your cats, is what we're saying.
I don't get the cat appeal. Also, what is the, I guess if you don't spay or neuter them, what does the cat smell?
There is a smell. You could, if you're.
What is that?
You ever looked into a-
ruins I've been in apartments where it's all I could smell.
Well,
It's absolutely
you've
all
told
I
me
could smell.
stories about who that is, and
Oh my God.
Have you guys, when you're looking for apartments, or if you've bought a condo or you bought a house or whatever, I've looked at condos to buy and gone and walked in and said, nope, I'm out, because it'll cost so much just to clean it. I remember I rented an apartment with my ex in Calgary, and it took us months to get that stuff out of the carpet. We had somebody before us, the tenant
You
before us
probably
was
just
gross.
stopped noticing it too.
Well,
Probably
yeah,
still there.
she had to go out to the store because I'm so allergic to cats too, and get like a cat, like a white powder that you put into the carpet to dampen the dander, like to get it to stop affecting you and your sinuses and all that stuff. It was crazy.
You're such a honey, let's try it out kind of guy. I would have been like, nope. Like
Yeah.
we
I'm out.
wouldn't,
There's
yeah,
this
we
thing.
wouldn't have been in there longer than 60 seconds. We'd be going, all right, bye.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm allergic to cats. This smells like cats. Gone. Well, that was easy. Do we have any more?
Oh, we're good.
All right,
Okay.
Dimitri, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
just
a
a
blast.
shame that now you got to fly back.
Yeah.
It's true. I flew here just for the podcast.
Just for the show.
What are you in town for?
I'm doing the puck talks on Thursday night at the Rivoli.
Which I am no longer doing, unfortunately.
Yeah, so everyone else should come and check it out. It'll be a
Sorry
great
about
time.
Well, even more of a reason now. Steve
Yes,
won't be there.
exactly.
No, I agreed to do it because I always agree to do puck talks, and it was just like, yeah, I'll do it. And then I realized I'm like, oh, I have a book due, and I'm very not done.
Yeah.
And I probably, like, every email I've gotten, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? I've been like, don't talk to me till next week. Everybody, this is my first time out of the house. It's actually really nice. So, yeah, but have fun. It's such a good lineup, too.
Yeah.
Which is why
No,
I
it's a
wanted to
blast.
go.
Who you on with?
Justin Bourne, Chris Johnston.
Oh,
Killing-
fuck those guys. Right? Boo.
Killing
Love
me.
those guys.
Killing me.
No, it's
They're
gonna
the
be good. It's gonna be good.
So you three, and there's another one I know they're working on, but I don't know if they've
Yeah, I'm
booked yet, so I'm not
sure.
going to say anything.
I'm not sure who else it's going to be, but it's going to be a good cast. So come out for that, and be doing the usual. I'll be doing my own podcast, some articles.
What?
Yeah,
What are you working on article wise, or do you not want to spill the beans?
I don't usually put too much planning into it. I usually like the day of.
Me
I
neither.
just think of
Okay,
something
yeah,
and I just
same.
write it. Yeah,
You
Me
guys
the
just
exact same.
I mean stuff changes. You never know. Like it's you gotta
Okay.
get in the mindset and just do it.
Yep.
So.
why the Leafs should re-sign JVR for 7 years at $8 million.
Yeah, that's what
Coming
we should
from
go into the
Dimitri Filipovic.
playoffs with. Totally.
One thing I've been seeing with that, which is so annoying, everyone's like, if we didn't sign Marlowe, we could sign JVR.
I was gonna. Okay, I got a whole rant about that we need to save for the next episode. But that is categorically false.
We have all summer to talk about that.
Oh
though.
my god, I
Yeah,
hate
so we're
that.
gonna talk about it.
That is
How can the Leafs reacquire Brendan Leipzig?
Truly.
Hey, Dimitri, thanks so much for coming on. If you want to check out his podcast, it's the Hockeypediocast. Also brought to you by Sportsnet, correct?
Yes,
All right.
What's
Any
your
guests?
Twitter handle?
Dim Filipovic. So follow me there, and guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the Philip podcast, Mitch. Glad you guys are wrong. All of them.
Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness.